Hello, friends. Did you know nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy these stories, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps. Thank you for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The morning frost hadn't burned off yet when Jedediah felt the first shudder run through his engine. He was climbing the steep grade toward Whitley Pass, 40,000 pounds of refrigeration equipment chained down tight in his trailer, when the temperature gauge started its slow climb toward red. 28 years of driving these mountains had taught him to read the signs. That particular vibration, the way the engine note changed just slightly, the smell of coolant starting to burn. He eased off the accelerator, watching the gauge, calculating distances. 12 miles to Benson's Hollow ahead, 40 back to the last town. No good options. The steam started as wisps, then billowed white against the cold morning air. Jedediah spotted a pull-off barely wide enough for his rig and eased over, setting the brakes with practiced precision. The shoulder dropped off sharp on the right, nothing but pine trees and a 200-foot fall. On the left, the mountain rose like a wall. He killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the tick of cooling metal. The mountains were silent except for wind through the pines. No traffic, no birds, just that particular quiet that comes with altitude and isolation. The damage was worse than he'd hoped. The main radiator hose had split lengthwise, coolant everywhere, already freezing on the engine block in the 14-degree air. His repair kit had tape, clamps, spare belts, but no replacement hose this size. He'd need help, and help was scarce on this stretch of road. His phone showed no signal. The CB radio crackled with static when he tried it, mountains blocking most frequencies. He was about to try walking when he heard an engine approaching from below. An old Ford pickup, early 80s from the look of it, more rust than paint. It slowed, pulled over on the opposite shoulder. The driver was tall, wearing a wool coat that had seen decades of use. His face was weathered, mountain-worn, with pale eyes that studied Jedediah's rig with interest. "Morning," the man said. His voice had an accent Jedediah couldn't quite place, something old-fashioned about it. "Saw your steam from down below. Radiator?" "Hose split. Dead in the water till I can find a replacement." The man walked around the truck, examining it with the eye of someone who knew machinery. "That's a particular size hose. Won't find it in Benson's Hollow. Jimmy's garage is closed anyway. Has been for 3 months." That was news to Jedediah. He'd stopped there just last month for an oil change, but arguing seemed pointless. "Name's Ezra," the man said. "Live up the mountain a ways. My brother Obadiah keeps all manner of parts. Might have something that'll work. Better than sitting here freezing." Jedediah hesitated. 28 years of driving had taught him to be careful about following strangers into the mountains. But the temperature was dropping, his fuel wouldn't last all night running the heater, and no help was coming. "Appreciate the offer," he said finally. He locked the cab, secured the trailer, and climbed into Ezra's truck. It smelled of tobacco and old leather. The seat springs shot, so he sank low. They drove in silence up a dirt road that branched off the main route, barely wide enough for the pickup. The trees pressed close, branches scraping the sides. "You haul through here regular?" Ezra asked. "Few times a year, based out of Johnson City." "Family man?" "Wife and 2 kids." Ezra nodded slowly. "Family's important. Most important thing there is. That's why we stay up here, away from all that." He gestured vaguely toward the valley. The house appeared suddenly around a curve, bigger than Jedediah expected. 2 stories of weathered wood and stone, smoke rising from 2 chimneys. Other buildings clustered around it, and vehicles in various states of repair sat rusting in the yard. Dogs appeared as they parked, 3 of them, big and lean. They watched with the intensity of animals that took their job seriously. Ezra held up a hand and they sat, but their eyes never left Jedediah. A woman emerged from the house, tall and severe, wearing a dress that might have been fashionable 50 years ago. "This is Prudence, my wife," Ezra said. I didn't catch your name." "Jedediah." "Biblical name," Prudence said, her voice softer than her appearance suggested. "You don't hear those much anymore. Jedediah's truck broke down, needs a radiator hose." She studied him for a long moment. "Obadiah's in the workshop. Always is this time of day." The workshop was exactly what you'd expect. Tools everywhere, parts hanging from rafters, the smell of oil and metal thick in the air. A man was bent over an engine block, and when he straightened, Jedediah saw he could have been Ezra's twin. Same height, same angular face, same pale eyes. "This is Jedediah. Needs a radiator hose for a 2014 Kenworth, 15-liter. Obadiah wiped his hands on a rag that hadn't been clean in years. He turned to a wall covered in hanging hoses and belts, running his fingers along them thoughtfully. "Might have something." He pulled down several hoses, examining each carefully before selecting one. "Should fit. Might need some persuading, but it'll hold." "How much?" Obadiah looked at Ezra, some silent communication passing between them. "No charge," Ezra said. "We help travelers when we can. Mountain way." It seemed too generous, but Jedediah wasn't in a position to argue. "I appreciate that." "After lunch," Ezra said. "Prudence will have food ready. Bad luck to work on an empty stomach." Jedediah wanted to protest, wanted to get his truck fixed and get moving, but something in Ezra's tone suggested this wasn't negotiable, and he was hungry, having skipped breakfast to make better time. The house was warmer than expected, a wood stove putting out serious heat. The dining table was already set for 4, good china that seemed out of place in the rustic setting. Prudence brought out food with practiced efficiency. Stew thick with meat and vegetables, warm bread, butter in an antique dish. They ate mostly in silence. The stew was excellent. The meat tender with a gamey flavor that suggested it hadn't come from a store. Venison, probably, or maybe wild boar. "You said Jimmy's garage has been closed 3 months," Jedediah said eventually. "I was just there in October." The three of them exchanged glances. "Jimmy died in September," Obadiah said finally. "Funeral was September 20th. I was there." Jedediah felt confused. He could picture Jimmy clearly, complaining about his wife's health food kicks. But memory could play tricks, especially with all the small towns blending together. "Maybe you're thinking of another garage," Prudence suggested. "Maybe," Jedediah agreed, though he knew he wasn't. After lunch, they drove back to his truck in a different vehicle, newer, with tools in the bed. Obadiah worked efficiently, draining the remaining coolant, removing the damaged hose, fitting the replacement. It didn't match exactly, but it fit. "Start her up," Obadiah said. The engine rumbled to life, temperature gauge sitting normal. Jedediah let it idle, watching for problems, but everything seemed fine. "Should get you where you're going," Obadiah said. "Might want to get a proper replacement when you can." "I can't thank you enough. You sure I can't pay you?" "We help when we can," Ezra repeated. "Mountain way." They drove off before Jedediah could respond. He sat in his cab for a moment, grateful but unsettled. Something about the afternoon felt off, though he couldn't say what. The way they'd appeared exactly when needed. The way they'd had exactly the right part. The way they'd known things they shouldn't know. But the truck was running, and he had a delivery to make. He pulled back onto the road and continued up the pass. The engine ran strong, no signs of trouble. He'd make Charlotte by midnight if the weather held. About 10 miles later, his radio crackled to life. He hadn't turned it on. "Jedediah," Ezra's voice, clear despite the static. "Yeah?" "You forgot something." Jedediah checked his pockets. Phone, wallet, keys, everything was there. What did I forget? To ask the right questions. Like why we were really on that road this morning. Why we had exactly what you needed. Why Jimmy's garage looks open to some people and closed to others. The radio went dead. Jedediah tried to respond but got nothing. He kept driving, because what else could he do? But the questions stayed with him, nagging like a song he couldn't quite remember. As darkness fell, he noticed his odometer reading. When he'd broken down, it had shown 247,851 miles. Now it read 247,864, 13 miles difference. But he'd only driven maybe 8 miles since the repair, and that included the detour to Ezra's place. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe he'd misremembered the original number. Maybe the gauge was malfunctioning. But deep down, he knew something else had happened. Those missing miles had been driven, just not by him. The thought should have been terrifying, but mostly it was exhausting. He had a delivery to make, a family to support, bills to pay. Whatever strangeness had touched his day, he couldn't afford to dwell on it. But as he drove through the darkness, he found himself checking his mirrors more often, looking for headlights that shouldn't be there, watching for vehicles that appeared from nowhere with exactly what was needed. The mountains kept their secrets, and Jedediah kept driving, the new hose holding pressure, carrying him toward Charlotte and away from questions he wasn't sure he wanted answered. 3 weeks passed before Jedediah took another mountain route. The Charlotte delivery had gone fine, the repair held, and he'd gotten a proper replacement hose at a shop in Tennessee. But the questions from that day stayed with him, especially at night when the road was empty and his mind had time to wander. The call came on a Tuesday. Premium rate for a rush delivery through the same pass, same client, same refrigeration units. Jedediah hesitated, then accepted. Bills didn't pay themselves, and avoiding a profitable route because of some strange encounter would be foolish. This time he checked everything twice before leaving. Fluids topped, belts tight, hoses secure. He even carried spare hoses, though he told himself it was just good practice, not superstition. The climb toward Whitley Pass was uneventful until he reached the spot where he'd broken down. The pull-off was still there, of course, but something was different. Fresh tire tracks in the gravel, deep ones from a heavy vehicle. And on the guardrail, someone had scratched numbers into the rust. 247,851. His original odometer reading from that day. Jedediah felt his hands tighten on the wheel. Someone knew. Someone had been watching, keeping track. He drove past without stopping, but the numbers stayed in his mind. 5 miles up, a vehicle appeared in his mirrors, approaching fast. The same Ford pickup, or one exactly like it. It came up close, too close, headlights bright in his mirrors. Then it backed off, maintaining a steady distance, following but not passing despite several opportunities. Jedediah grabbed his CB. "This is westbound truck at mile marker 58. Pick up behind me. You need to pass?" Static. Then Ezra's voice, clear as if he were sitting in the cab. "Just making sure you get where you're going, Jedediah. These roads can be tricky." "I'm fine. Don't need an escort." Everyone needs help sometimes, even when they don't know it. The pickup stayed behind him for another 10 miles, then disappeared around a curve. When Jedediah rounded the same curve seconds later, the road was empty. No turnoffs, no place to pull over, just empty asphalt and trees. He made Charlotte without further incident, but on the return trip he decided to stop in Benson's Hollow. He needed to know about Jimmy's garage, needed to prove to himself that his memory wasn't playing tricks. The garage was there, right where it should be, but it was different. The windows were boarded, the pumps removed, weeds growing through cracks in the concrete. A faded "closed" sign hung on the door, dated September of the previous year. An elderly woman was walking past with a small dog. Jedediah waved her over. "Excuse me, ma'am. Jimmy's garage, when did it close?" She looked at him strangely. "When Jimmy died. 3 months ago. Heart attack at his desk. Terrible thing. I could have sworn I was here in October." "Lots of people say that," she interrupted. "Something about this place makes people think they've been here when they haven't. Or haven't been here when they have. Jimmy used to joke about it, said the garage existed in 2 times at once." She walked on before Jedediah could ask more questions. He stood there, staring at the abandoned building, trying to reconcile his clear memory of Jimmy changing his oil with the evident fact that Jimmy had been dead at the time. He was about to leave when he noticed something in the window, a work order, trapped between the glass and the board. He could just make out the date, October 15th, his name, his truck's license plate number, the oil change he remembered. His phone rang, unknown number, but he recognized the area code, local. "Jedediah?" Prudence's voice, soft but urgent. "You need to come see us." "Why?" "Because you're asking questions, and questions without context can be dangerous. Ezra says to tell you, the 13 miles matter." "What does that mean?" "It means you drove them, but not when you think. Come to the house. Same road, same turn. We'll explain what we can." She hung up before he could respond. Jedediah sat in his truck, engine idling, trying to decide. The rational part of his mind said to drive away, forget all of it, stick to interstate routes from now on. But the questions wouldn't let him go. Those 13 miles, the work order for a dead man's garage, the truck that disappeared on an empty road. He drove back up the mountain, found the turnoff, followed the dirt road to the house. It looked exactly the same, smoke rising from the chimneys, dogs watching from the yard. But this time, there were other vehicles. Older trucks mostly, and a few cars that looked like they'd been there for decades. Ezra met him at the door. "Glad you came. Truth is easier to swallow with coffee." The kitchen was full of people, men mostly, but a few women, all with that same mountain-worn look. They watched Jedediah with expressions that ranged from curiosity to suspicion. "This is the one?" an older man asked. "This is him," Ezra confirmed. "Drove the 13 miles, came back unchanged." "That's rare," someone said. "Most who drive those miles don't come back at all." Jedediah set down his coffee cup harder than necessary. "Someone want to explain what you're talking about?" Obadiah spoke from the corner where he'd been silent. "The pass has thin spots, places where time works different. You broke down at one of them. We helped you, yes, but while your truck was being fixed, it was also being driven. 13 miles through a different when." "That's insane." "Is it?" Prudence asked. "You have a work order from a dead man. You remember things that couldn't have happened. You've seen vehicles disappear on empty roads, which is more insane, believing your own experiences or denying them. Why 13 miles specifically?" "Because that's how far it is through the thin spot and back," Ezra said. "We've been monitoring it for generations. Sometimes people slip through without meaning to, drive miles that happen in no time at all, or take hours to drive distances that should take minutes. Your truck went through while you were here eating lunch. You didn't notice because you weren't in it." "Who was driving it?" Silence fell over the room. Finally, Ezra spoke. "Best not to ask that. Some answers are heavier than the questions." An elderly woman in the corner stood up, leaning heavily on a cane. "Show him the book, Ezra. He's earned that much." Ezra retrieved a leather-bound ledger from a cabinet, thick with age and use. He opened it to a marked page, ran his finger down a column of entries. Names, dates, miles driven, notes in the margin. "October 15th, he read. "Jedediah Morse. 13 miles. Returned unchanged. Note: truck serviced at Crossroads. Crossroads? What Jimmy's garage is to those who can see both sides. A place that exists in multiple times at once. You were there in October, just not the October you think. Jedediah studied the ledger. Hundreds of entries going back decades. Most had notes like lost, changed, didn't return. His was one of the few marked unchanged. Why are you tracking this? Because someone has to, the elderly woman said. The past takes people sometimes. Trucks disappear, drivers vanish, and nobody down in the valleys understands why. We try to help when we can, guide people through safe, bring them back when possible. And if I hadn't broken down that day, you might have driven into the thin spot yourself, Ezra said. Might have ended up like these others. He indicated the entries marked lost. The breakdown saved you in a way. Gave us a chance to intervene. So you caused it? The breakdown? No. But we watch for it. Wait for it. When someone breaks down at that spot, we know they're susceptible to slipping through. So we help, but we also protect. The 13 miles my truck drove were necessary, Obadiah said. A trade, you might say. The thin spot takes its due, one way or another. Better 13 miles of empty truck than a driver who might not find his way back. Jedediah thought about all the missing person reports he'd heard over the years. Truckers who vanished on mountain roads, vehicles found abandoned or never found at all. How many people know about this? More than you'd think, fewer than should, Prudence said. Mountain families mostly, ones who've been here long enough to see the patterns. Some truckers figure it out, the ones who survive their encounters. But talking about it sounds crazy, so most don't. What am I supposed to do with this information? Whatever you want, Ezra said. Keep driving the pass if you need to. We'll watch for you, help if we can, or take other routes. Forget this conversation, pretend the world is simpler than it is. Why tell me at all? Because you came looking for answers, and because you survived unchanged, which means you're somehow resistant to what the thin spot does to most people. That's valuable. Valuable how? The elderly woman spoke again. Sometimes people go missing who shouldn't. Good people, needed people. Someone who can travel the thin spots unchanged might be able to find them, bring them back. You want me to be some kind of... what? Rescue driver? We want you to be aware, Ezra said. That's all for now. Keep your eyes open, trust your instincts, and if you see something that doesn't make sense, remember that sense isn't always what it seems. Jedediah left the house with more questions than answers, but also with a phone number. Emergency use only, Ezra had said. If you see someone about to slip through, or if you slip through yourself, call. We'll do what we can. He drove back to the interstate, took the long way home, tried to process what he'd learned. It was crazy, all of it. But the work order in his wallet was real. The 13 miles on his odometer were real. The memory of Jimmy changing his oil was real, even if it had happened in a time that didn't quite exist. 2 months later, he was driving the pass again when he saw a broken-down rig at that same pull-off. A young driver, maybe 25, standing by his truck looking at a blown tire. Jedediah could have driven past, but something made him stop. "Need help?" he called out. "Spare's flat too," the kid said. "Just my luck." Jedediah looked at the spot, at the way the shadows fell, at the faint shimmer in the air that might have been heat distortion or might have been something else. "Let me call someone," he said, pulling out his phone. "I know some folks who can help." Ezra answered on the first ring. "The young driver at the pull-off? We see him. 20 minutes. They arrived in 15, Ezra and Obadiah in a truck with 2 spare tires that happened to be exactly the right size. They worked quick and efficient, got the kid back on the road without any mention of thin spots or missing miles. "Thanks," the kid said to Jedediah before leaving. "Lucky you stopped." "Yeah," Jedediah agreed. "Lucky." After the kid drove off, Ezra turned to Jedediah. "You saw it. The shimmer. You knew he was in danger." "I don't know what I saw." "You saw enough. That boy would have changed his tire himself, driven straight into the thin spot at the worst possible time. Would have been another lost entry in the book. So I saved him? You gave us the chance to save him. That's what we meant by valuable." The pattern continued for 6 months. Jedediah would drive the pass, sometimes seeing nothing unusual, sometimes spotting that telltale shimmer in the air. When he did, he'd call Ezra, and they'd find a way to intervene. A convenient breakdown, a sudden detour, something to keep the potential victim away from the thin spots at the wrong time. But then came the night that changed everything. It was late November, the pass already treacherous with black ice. Jedediah was hauling a load of steel beams, heavy enough that he had to take the grades slow. Snow had started falling an hour back, thick flakes that cut visibility to maybe 50 feet. He was approaching the pull-off when he saw the jackknifed rig blocking both lanes. No lights, no flares, just a massive obstacle appearing out of the snow. He hit the brakes careful, felt the anti-lock system fighting for grip, managed to stop just feet from the trailer. The truck was running but empty. Driver's door hung open, snow already accumulating on the seat. Fresh tracks led off into the woods, but something about them was wrong. They went in a perfectly straight line, regardless of trees or obstacles, like whoever made them had walked through solid objects. Jedediah called Ezra. The phone rang once, then went dead. He tried again. Nothing. His CB was silent too, not even static. He grabbed his flashlight and emergency kit, locked his cab, and followed the tracks. They led into the woods for maybe 100 yards, then simply stopped. No turnaround, no body, just an end like the person had ceased to exist mid-step. "You shouldn't be here." Jedediah spun around. A man stood behind him, wearing a trucker's uniform from what looked like the 1970s. His face was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes had that 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd seen too much. "Who are you?" "Name's Marcus. Or was. Hard to say what I am now." He looked at his hands like he was surprised to see them. "Been walking these woods for... Time doesn't work right here. Could be days, could be decades." "Are you the driver of that jackknifed rig?" "That's my truck, but also not. It's complicated." Marcus stepped closer, and Jedediah could see snow falling through him, not on him. "You're one of Ezra's watchers, aren't you? Trying to save people from the thin spots?" "How do you know about that?" "Because I've been watching too. From the other side. The side you can't quite see but know is there. There are dozens of us here, maybe hundreds. All the lost entries in Ezra's book. But you're here, talking to me. The barriers are breaking down. Have been for months. Too much traffic, too many people pushing through without understanding what they're disturbing. The thin spots are becoming tears." As if to demonstrate, the air between two trees suddenly rippled, and Jedediah could see through to somewhere else. Another road, similar but different, where it was daylight and summer and trucks drove past that looked decades out of date. "That's the problem," Marcus said. "The different whens are bleeding together. Soon there won't be separation at all. Every time, every possibility, all happening at once." "How do we stop it?" "You don't. But Ezra's family, they know things. Old things. There's a reason they've been watching the pass for generations. They're not just recording what happens. They're holding it together." A sound echoed through the woods, like metal tearing, but deeper, more fundamental. The shimmer in the air spread, And suddenly Jedediah could see multiple versions of the same space. The jackknifed truck was there in some, gone in others. Marcus existed in a few, was absent in most. "Get back to your truck," Marcus said urgently. "Drive through, don't stop, no matter what you see. And tell Ezra the confluence is starting. He'll know what that means." Jedediah ran back to the road, but it was wrong now. His truck was there, but so were others. Dozens of trucks from different eras, all occupying the same space but not quite touching. He could see their drivers, some aware of the situation, others oblivious, driving through their own separate times. He climbed into his cab, started the engine, began creeping forward. The jackknifed rig was both there and not there. He drove through it, feeling resistance like moving through water. Then he was past, and the road was normal again. But in his mirrors, the chaos continued. Time folding and unfolding, the past existing in every moment it had ever existed simultaneously. He drove faster than was safe given the conditions, took the curves too quick, felt his trailer wanting to swing wide. But he had to get clear, had to reach somewhere stable. 10 miles down, the world solidified again. Single timeline, single road, single reality. He pulled over, hands shaking, called Ezra. "The confluence," he said when Ezra answered. "Marcus said to tell you the confluence is starting." Silence on the line, then, "Come to the house. Now. Don't stop for anything." The drive to the turnoff felt longer than usual, and several times Jedediah saw things that shouldn't be there. A wagon train crossing the road, a convoy of military vehicles from World War II, modern cars that hadn't been manufactured yet. All brief glimpses, there and gone, but increasing in frequency. The house was lit up like midday, despite it being near midnight. Every member of the extended family seemed to be there, and others too. People Jedediah didn't recognize. They were all working on something, painting symbols on the walls, arranging objects in specific patterns, consulting old books written in languages that predated English. "It's happening sooner than we expected," Ezra said when he saw Jedediah. "The barriers between times are failing. Without intervention, this entire region will collapse into temporal chaos." Temporal chaos? Every moment existing at once, past, present, future, all possibilities overlapping. Nobody could survive it. The human mind can't process that kind of reality. "What are you doing?" "What our family has always done. We're the anchors, the ones who hold the timeline steady in this area. But something's changed. Too much traffic, maybe. Or someone found another thin spot and pushed through wrong. The system is failing." Prudence approached carrying an old photograph. It showed the pass from maybe a century ago, but with the same shimmer in the air Jedediah had learned to recognize. "This has always been a problem area," she said. "The mountains here, they're old in ways that have nothing to do with geology. They remember every moment they've existed, and sometimes they forget to keep those moments separate. So what do? "We perform the binding," Obadiah said from across the room. "Same as our great-great-grandfather did in 1894, same as his grandfather did before that. We convince the mountain to maintain linear time." "Convince? Wrong word, maybe," Ezra admitted. "We make a deal. The mountain gets what it wants, we get stability." "What does a mountain want?" "Witnesses," the elderly woman from before said. She was sitting in a chair, looking exhausted. "It wants to be remembered, to have its stories told. That's what the 13 miles are about. People driving through its memories, experiencing its past. But if everyone did that, chaos. So we limit it, control it. A few people here and there, carefully managed. The mountain gets its witnesses, humanity gets linear time. And if the system fails?" Everyone looked at each other, and Jedediah saw fear in their faces. Then we reset, Ezra said quietly. Go back to a point before the failure and try again. But everyone who exists between that point and now ceases to exist, Prudence finished. Jedediah thought about his family, his life, everyone he knew. How far back? Depends on when we can find a stable point. Could be days, could be years. That's insane. That's reality, Obadiah said. The reality most people never see because families like ours keep it hidden, keep it stable. A younger man burst through the door, face flushed from running. The convergence is accelerating. Multiple timelines are manifesting on the pass. There are reports of accidents that happened and didn't happen, people meeting themselves, trucks existing in multiple places at once. Ezra stood, suddenly looking like a general preparing for battle. Then we don't have time for the full ritual. We need to do an emergency anchor. That requires a volunteer, Prudence said quietly. Someone to drive the 13 miles through all the overlapping times at once, to witness everything the mountain wants to show. That would destroy a human mind, Obadiah protested. Not necessarily, the elderly woman said, looking at Jedediah. Not if the person was already resistant, already proven they could handle the thin spots. Everyone turned to stare at Jedediah. You want me to drive through that chaos? You're the only one who can, Ezra said. You've already driven the 13 miles once and came back unchanged. You have resistance we don't understand but can't ignore. What happens if I fail? We all cease to exist and try again in an earlier timeline where you might succeed. And if I succeed? The timelines separate, stability returns, and life continues normally. Plus, you'll have memories of every moment this pass has ever existed, the weight of centuries of travel, every story, every life that crossed these mountains. Jedediah thought about the jackknifed truck, about Marcus walking through trees, about the chaos spreading down the mountain toward populated areas. What do I have to do? Drive the pass, Ezra said. Start at the bottom, drive to the top, then back. 13 miles exactly. Don't stop. Don't deviate no matter what you see. The mountain will show you everything, and you have to witness it all. When? Now. Every minute we wait, the convergence gets worse. Jedediah stood, checked his keys, started toward the door. Prudence caught his arm. You'll see terrible things, beautiful things, things that will make you want to stop, to help, to change what happened. You can't. You're a witness, not a participant. Remember that. He drove back to the pass, where reality was coming apart at the seams. The road existed in dozens of versions simultaneously. Dirt trail, paved highway, futuristic something that hadn't been built yet. All overlapping, all equally real. He entered the chaos at exactly midnight, driving into a world where time had no meaning. His speedometer showed different speeds simultaneously. His odometer ran backward and forward at once. The radio played songs from every decade, all at the same time. The first mile showed him the indigenous people who originally used this pass, walking trails that would become roads. He saw them all at once, thousands of years of travel compressed into a single moment. The second mile was early settlers, wagons struggling up grades that didn't quite match the modern road. He saw accidents, deaths, births in wagon beds, the whole human drama of westward expansion. The third mile was the Civil War, troops moving through the pass, battles fought where rest stops would later be built. He could smell gunpowder, hear screams, feel the mountain remembering violence. Each mile brought new eras. The advent of automobiles, their drivers terrified of the grades. The Depression, families fleeing poverty, their possessions tied to running boards. World War II convoys, the interstate construction that bypassed parts of the old road. Decades of truckers like himself, fighting weather and grades and time. By mile 7, the turnback point, Jedediah's mind was fracturing. Too much information, too many lives, too many stories all at once. He could feel himself spreading across time, becoming part of the road's memory. But he held on to 3 things: his name, his purpose, and the odometer showing he needed 6 more miles. The return journey was worse. Now he wasn't just seeing the past, but all possible futures. Roads that might be built. Technologies that could exist. Post-apocalyptic wastelands and gleaming utopias, all equally potential. Mile 10 nearly broke him. He saw himself, dozens of versions, all the choices he might make, the lives he might live. Some versions were old, some died young, some never made it past this night. The temptation to stop, to choose a better timeline, was overwhelming. Mile 11 showed him the truth about Ezra's family. They hadn't just been watching the pass, they'd been feeding it. Small sacrifices of time and memory, keeping the mountain satisfied. He saw generations of them, making the same deal, paying the same price. Some years of their lives simply didn't exist, given to the mountain to maintain the balance. Mile 12 was Marcus and all the others like him, the lost ones, existing between times. They weren't dead, weren't alive, or something else. The mountain's permanent witnesses, experiencing every moment simultaneously, their consciousness spread across all of time. The final mile was the worst and the best. He saw the mountain itself, not as rock and earth, but as something older, something that existed before linear time, that remembered when past, present, and future were all now. It wasn't malevolent, wasn't benevolent, was simply other, trying to exist in a universe that had chosen sequential time. And then he was through. 13 miles exactly. The world snapped back into focus. Single timeline, single reality. He pulled over, gasping, his mind reeling with centuries of memory that were already starting to fade like dreams. His phone rang. Ezra, you did it? The convergence is stabilizing. How much do you remember? Too much, not enough. His voice sounded strange, older maybe, or just tired. The mountain, it's not from here, is it? No, it's older than here, older than Earth maybe. It just wants to exist the way it always has, with all times happening at once. We force it into linear time, and in exchange, some people slip through. Experience the mountain's reality, become witnesses to what it really is. Yes, and now you're one of them. One of the few who've seen both sides and survived intact. What happens now? Now you go home, live your life, but you'll always see the thin spots, always know where time isn't quite stable. You can help us maintain the balance, or you can try to forget. Most choose to forget. And if I don't? Then you become like us, guardians of linear time. It's not an easy life, but it's necessary. Jedediah thought about the versions of himself he'd seen, all the possible futures. In most of them, he chose to forget. But in the ones where he seemed happiest, he remembered. The missing years, he said. The ones your family sacrifices. What happens to them? They exist in the mountain's time. We live them all at once when we make the deal, then return to linear time without them. It's why we age strangely, why we sometimes know things we shouldn't. And Marcus? The other lost ones? They chose to stay in the convergence, to become permanent witnesses. It's not death, but it's not life either. They exist in all times simultaneously, experiencing everything, understanding everything, but unable to change anything. That's what almost happened to me. Yes, but you're resistant. We still don't understand why, but you can travel the thin spots without losing yourself. That's incredibly rare. Jedediah drove home that night with his mind full of fragments. Centuries of travel, thousands of lives, all compressed into 13 miles. Most of it was already fading, but some things stayed. The important things. The truth about time, about the mountain, about the price of keeping reality stable. His wife noticed the change immediately. "You look older. Not physically, just older. Bad night, difficult drive." She studied him with concern. "Maybe you should stick to easier routes for a while." Maybe. But he knew he wouldn't. The mountain was part of him now, or he was part of it. He could feel the thin spots calling, could sense when the balance was threatened. 3 days later, Ezra called. "There's another convergence starting. Smaller, but still dangerous. North Carolina, near Asheville." "I'm in Texas." "I know, but you're the only other person who can do what needs to be done. There must be others, other families like yours." "There are, but most are tired, worn down by generations of sacrifice, and none have anyone with your resistance." Jedediah looked at his schedule, his planned routes, his normal life. Then he looked at his hands, remembering how they'd gripped the wheel while reality came apart around him. "Send me the coordinates." He became a secret guardian of linear time. To the world, he was just a trucker, hauling loads across the country. But to the families who knew, who watched, who maintained the balance, he was something else. The one who could drive through convergences and come back. The one who could witness the mountain's truth without becoming lost in it. Years passed. He aged, but strangely, sometimes younger, sometimes older, as if his personal timeline wasn't quite synced with everyone else's. His wife noticed, but didn't ask questions, sensing that the answers would be harder to live with than the mystery. He trained others when he could, looking for that rare resistance, that ability to see time's instability without being destroyed by it. Most failed the test, forgetting the experiences as soon as they were over. But a few remembered, joined the network of watchers. The convergences came more frequently as traffic increased, as the world sped up, as humanity pushed harder against the boundaries of what was possible. Each time, someone had to drive the 13 miles, witness the mountain's reality, convince it to maintain linear time for a little longer. Sometimes it was Jedediah. Sometimes it was one of the new guardians. Always it was dangerous. Always there was the risk of becoming lost like Marcus, spread across all times, witnessing everything, changing nothing. But they continued, because the alternative was chaos. A world where past, present, and future collapsed into a single maddening moment, where cause and effect ceased to function, where humanity would face the universe as it truly was, without the comfortable illusion of sequential time. 20 years after that first breakdown, Jedediah stood at the pull-off where it all began. His truck was newer, his hair was gray, his body bore the weight of decades of driving, but his eyes were sharp, seeing the shimmer in the air that marked a thin spot. A young driver had pulled over, checking his phone, oblivious to the danger. Jedediah could see the convergence starting, the layers of time beginning to separate. He walked over, friendly smile, casual manner. "Engine trouble?" "Nah, just checking directions. GPS is being weird up here. They do that in the mountains. Tell you what, follow me down. I know these roads can get you where you're going." The kid agreed, grateful for the help. They drove away from the thin spot just as reality started to fracture. In his mirrors, Jedediah saw the road exist in dozens of times simultaneously, then snap back to normal as they moved out of range. The kid never knew how close he'd come to driving 13 miles through the heart of time itself. Never knew that an old trucker had saved him from becoming either a witness to everything or nothing at all. That was the job. Not just driving loads, but driving the line between stability and chaos. Keeping the roads clear, the timelines separate, the world turning in its comfortable illusion of sequential moments. Jedediah drove on, checking his mirrors, watching for shimmers, feeling the mountain's presence always at the edge of perception. He had maybe 10 more years before his body wouldn't be able to handle the convergences anymore. 10 years to find and train his replacement, because someone always had to drive the 13 miles. Someone always had to witness the truth. Someone always had to make the deal that kept time flowing in the direction humanity needed it to flow. The mountain was patient. It had existed before linear time would exist after. But for now, for this brief moment in its existence, it agreed to play by humanity's rules. As long as there were witnesses, as long as someone remembered what it truly was, as long as someone was willing to drive those 13 miles through the heart of forever and come back to tell the tale, even if they could never truly tell it, even if the world would never believe it, even if the only proof was in the shimmer of air on a mountain road and the certain knowledge that time was more fragile than anyone dared imagine. Elijah checked the manifest twice before signing. 12 pallets of mining equipment bound for the Blackwood Coal Company, though the address seemed off, just end of Route 1247, Harrow County. The dispatcher kept adjusting his glasses nervously, which should have been Elijah's first warning. "Standard delivery?" Elijah asked. "Standard equipment, yeah, but the location." The man trailed off. "The family's up there. They don't much like outsiders, especially since the company pulled out." It was noon when Elijah began the drive into the mountains. His freightliner was loaded heavy but balanced, 40,000 pounds of what the manifest claimed was mining equipment. Route 1247 started normal enough, but degraded quickly. Asphalt to patches, patches to gravel, gravel to dirt, rutted by years of heavy trucks. The first signs of habitation came an hour in. Not houses exactly, more like structures built from whatever was available. Tar paper roofs, walls of mixed materials, smoke rising from pipes that served as chimneys. People watched from porches and windows. Men in worn coveralls, women in faded dresses, children who should have been in school standing barefoot in yards of packed dirt. Nobody waved. Nobody smiled. They just watched. The road forked ahead with no signs. According to his hand-drawn map, he should go right, but the left showed fresh tire tracks. He chose left, figuring active use meant through passage. 5 miles later, the road opened into a clearing. The mine entrance was obvious, a dark mouth in the mountainside reinforced with massive timbers. But this wasn't the operational mine he'd expected. The equipment was decades old, rust-covered, held together with welding and determination. Men worked with hand tools mostly, the kind of operation that should have been shut down by safety inspectors years ago. A man separated from the group, walking with the kind of authority that didn't need announcement. Maybe 40, built solid from a lifetime of physical labor, clean-shaven, unusual for these parts. "You're early," he said when Elijah climbed down. "Expected you at 2. Elijah checked his watch. 1:30. "Made good time." "I'm Silas Crenshaw. I run this operation." His handshake was firm enough to hurt. "Though I'm curious what you think you're delivering." "Mining equipment, says so on the manifest." Silas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mining equipment, sure. Let's get it unloaded." A man appeared with a forklift that looked ready to fall apart. Hiram, Silas called him, older, with the permanent stoop of a lifetime underground. He worked silent and efficient. As they unloaded, Elijah became aware of being watched, not just by the workers, but from windows in the scattered buildings. Women and children, all with the same dark eyes, same wary expressions. "Family operation?" Elijah asked. "Everyone here is family. Cousins, in-laws, distant relations. The mountain keeps us close. A woman emerged from one of the buildings carrying a tray, maybe 30, pretty in a hard way, wearing a dress that belonged in another era. "My wife, Temperance," Silas said. "Thought you might be thirsty." The liquid in the pitcher was dark, almost black. "Just water would be fine," Elijah said. "This is water. From our well. Minerals turn it dark, but it's clean." He took a small sip. It tasted of minerals and earth, cold enough to make his teeth ache. "You should stay for supper," Temperance said. "We don't get visitors often." "I need to get back. Another load tomorrow." She exchanged a look with Silas that Elijah couldn't read. The 8th pallet shifted during unloading, a strap coming loose. Elijah caught it before it fell, but the side cracked slightly. Inside, visible through the gap, were not mining tools, but weapons. Rifles, ammunition, what looked like explosives. Elijah quickly secured the strap, pretended he'd seen nothing. But Silas had noticed. "Problem with the load?" "Strap came loose. Fixed now." They stared at each other, understanding passing between them. Elijah had seen something he shouldn't have, and both knew it. The unloading continued in tense silence. When the last pallet was on the ground, Silas signed the delivery receipt without checking the inventory. "Sure you won't stay? These roads get dangerous after dark." "I'll be fine." "Dangerous in ways you might not expect. People go missing up here. Trucks found burned out, drivers never found. Mining company blamed it on accidents, but we know better." "Is that a threat?" "That's a warning. There's a war happening up here, Mr. Morse. Has been for years. The company pulled out officially, but they left men behind. Security, they call them. We call them something else." A child ran up, whispered in Silas's ear. His expression darkened. "Speak of the devil," he muttered. 3 vehicles pulled into the clearing. SUVs with tinted windows, the kind that screamed government or corporate security. Men stepped out wearing tactical gear, carrying rifles openly. The lead man was tall, thin, with the bearing of ex-military. "Mr. Crenshaw, we need to talk about the shipment that just arrived." "Nothing to talk about, Garrett. This is private property." "Property you don't own. The mineral rights still belong to Blackwood, which means everything under this ground and anything used to extract it is ours to inspect. Your company abandoned this mine, abandoned these people. We suspended operations, different thing legally." Garrett's eyes moved to Elijah's truck, to the unloaded pallets. "This shipment was meant for our operations in Kentucky. Funny how it ended up here instead." "Don't know anything about that?" "No? The serial numbers on those crates will tell a different story." The tension was electric. Elijah counted armed men on both sides. The miners had emerged from buildings carrying tools that could become weapons, picks, hammers, pry bars. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. "You should leave," Silas said quietly. "This doesn't concern you." But Garrett stepped forward. "Actually, it does. Mr. Morse here just delivered stolen property. That makes him an accessory." "I just haul what I'm paid to haul," Elijah said. "And you'll testify to that? In court? Under oath?" Garrett smiled. "Or would you rather we check what's really in those crates? Because I'm betting it's not mining equipment." "You got a warrant?" Silas asked. "Don't need one. Homeland Security. These mountains are full of sovereign citizen types, militias, domestic terrorists. One phone call and this place is swarming with feds. Make your call then." Garrett pulled out a satellite phone, started dialing. Silas watched him, calculation in his eyes. The armed men on both sides shifted slightly, fingers moving closer to triggers. "Wait," Temperance said, stepping forward. "No need for calls. Check the crates if you want. It's just equipment. Old stuff we bought surplus." Garrett paused, studying her. "Open one." Hiram looked at Silas, who nodded slightly. He approached one of the crates, not the one Elijah had seen into, and pried it open. Inside were indeed mining tools, old but functional. "All of them," Garrett said. "That'll take hours." "Then we'd better get started." This was escalating toward something bad. Elijah could feel it. When they opened the crate with the weapons, there would be violence. These families were cornered, desperate, and armed. Garrett's men were professional but outnumbered by people who knew this terrain. "I need to go," Elijah said. "Got another run tonight." "You're not going anywhere," Garrett said. "You're a material witness." "To what? A delivery? I've got paperwork. Everything's legal on my end." "We'll see about that." One of Garrett's men moved to block Elijah's truck. Others spread out, creating a perimeter. The families responded, surrounding the outsiders. Children were quickly ushered inside. Women disappeared, probably to get more weapons. "This is about to go very wrong," Elijah said quietly to Silas. "It went wrong when the company decided we didn't matter," Silas replied. "When they shut down the only job source for 100 miles. When they left us to starve while they sat on mineral rights they'll never use." "Those weapons." "Protection. Garrett's men have been harassing us for months, trying to force us out so the company can sell the land to developers. This mine is all we have." A woman's scream cut through the tension. Everyone turned. One of Garrett's men had grabbed a teenage girl who'd been trying to reach one of the houses. He had his arm around her throat, using her as a shield. "Let her go," Silas said, his voice deadly calm. "Everyone backs off," the man said. "We're leaving with the truck driver and the manifest. Any problems, the girl comes too." The girl's mother appeared in a doorway holding a hunting rifle. "You let my daughter go or I'll put a hole through your head. You'll hit her too at this range." The situation balanced on a knife's edge. Elijah could see fingers on triggers, hammers being cocked, everyone waiting for someone else to make the first move. Then Silas did something unexpected. He set down his weapon, raised his hands, and walked slowly toward the man holding the girl. "Take me instead," he said. "I'm the one you want. I run this place. The girl's just a kid. Stay back. I'm unarmed. Look." Silas turned slowly, showing he had no weapons. "Let her go. Take me. I'm worth more as a hostage anyway." The man hesitated, and in that moment of uncertainty, the girl bit his arm hard. He loosened his grip just enough for her to twist away and run. Her mother grabbed her, pulled her inside. Garrett's man raised his rifle toward them, but Garrett stopped him. "Stand down. We're not here to hurt kids." "Then what are you here for?" Silas asked. "The truth. About what's really in those crates." "About what you're planning. We're planning to survive, that's all. Your company took everything else." Garrett lowered his weapon slightly. "Open the rest of the crates, all of them. Let's see what we're really dealing with." Silas nodded to his people. One by one, they opened the crates. Tools in most, some food supplies, medical equipment. Then they got to the one Elijah had seen into. "Stop," Silas said. That one you don't want to open." "Why not?" "Because once you see what's in there, there's no going back. No pretending this is just about mineral rights." Garrett approached the crate himself. "Open it." Hiram pried it open. The weapons were there, as Elijah had seen. But underneath them was something else. Documents, hundreds of them. Photos, maps. Garrett picked up one of the documents, his face paling as he read. "Where did you get these?" "Your company isn't as good at destroying evidence as they think," Temperance said. 23 miners dead from preventable accidents. Safety reports falsified. Inspectors bribed. And the big one, the aquifer contamination you've been hiding for 3 years. You can't prove any of this. We have the water samples, the medical records of everyone in this hollow getting sick, the internal memos where your bosses discuss the cover-up." Garrett set down the document carefully. "What do you want?" "We want you to leave. Stop harassing us. Let us work this played-out mine for whatever coal is left. In exchange, these documents stay buried. That's blackmail. That's survival." Garrett stood silent for a long moment, his men waiting for orders. The families watched, weapons still ready but not aimed. The only sound was wind through the hollow and the distant creak of the old mining equipment. "I need to make a call," Garrett finally said. "No calls," Silas said. "You decide now. Here, between us." "I don't have that authority." "Then get it." Garrett looked at his men, at the armed families, at the documents that could destroy his company. "Give me an hour. Let me talk to my team, privately." Silas nodded. "1 hour. We'll be waiting." Garrett and his men retreated to their vehicles. Elijah started toward his truck, but Silas stopped him. "You need to stay. You're part of this now." "I just delivered cargo." "Cargo you knew wasn't mining equipment. I saw your face when that crate opened. You knew, but you kept quiet. That makes you one of us, like it or not." They waited in tense silence. Some of the children emerged from hiding, but their mothers kept them close. Men stayed at their posts, watching the SUVs where Garrett's team was presumably debating their options. Temperance approached Elijah with a cup of coffee. Real coffee, not the mineral dark water from before. "You seem like a good man," she said. "Wrong place, wrong time. Story of my life? How'd you get into hauling for people like us?" "People like you?" "People the world forgot. People living on land everyone else wants. People who fight back when pushed. I haul for whoever pays. Don't usually ask questions. But you knew this wasn't normal mining equipment." Elijah was quiet for a moment. "My dispatcher said it was a rush job. Triple rate, cash on delivery. Yeah, I knew something was off. And you took it anyway. I've got bills, family, a son who needs medical treatment that insurance won't cover." Temperance's expression softened. "What's wrong with him?" "Kidney disease. Needs a transplant. We're on lists, but lists don't pay for the surgery. So you take dangerous jobs." "I take what I can get." She studied him with those dark eyes that seemed to run in the family. "If this goes bad, if shooting starts, you get in your truck and drive. Don't stop. Don't look back." "What about you, the children?" "We've been preparing for this fight for 3 years. Ever since the company announced the closure but kept the mineral rights. We knew they'd come back, try to force us out. The weapons. Some of them. The rest is evidence. Proof of what they did to this land, these people. My father died of lung disease at 53. My brother at 41. Both worked that mine since they were teenagers. Company knew the ventilation was bad, knew the dust suppression didn't work, didn't care. And Silas? Lost his first wife to the contaminated water. Cancer at 28. His son was born with deformities from the chemicals. Died before his first birthday. The company paid nothing, admitted nothing. Said it was genetics, bad luck. So this is revenge. This is justice, the only kind we're going to get. The hour passed slowly. Men checked weapons, women gathered supplies, everyone preparing for whatever came next. Elijah noticed escape routes being quietly identified, vehicles positioned for quick departure. These people expected violence. Finally, Garrett emerged from the SUV. He walked back alone, his men staying with the vehicles. That was either a good sign or a very bad one. "We have a deal," he said when he reached Silas. "You keep the mine, we keep the documents. Nobody talks about what's in those crates." "Not enough," Silas said. "We want written guarantee the company won't come back, ever. This land becomes ours officially." "I can't." "Then no deal." Garrett's jaw clenched. I'll need to go back to the office, get paperwork drawn up. It'll take a few days. You have 24 hours, and he stays. Silas pointed at one of Garrett's men. Insurance, you'll come back. That's kidnapping. That's insurance. Your man will be fed, treated well. When you come back with the papers, he leaves with you. And if I don't come back, then we release everything. Documents, photos, water samples, media, EPA, FBI, everything. Garrett looked back at his men. One of them, younger, maybe mid-20s, stepped forward. I'll stay, he said. Johnson, you don't have to... It's okay, sir. These are just people trying to survive. I get it. The exchange was made. Johnson handed over his weapons, walked calmly to where the families waited. Garrett and the others drove away, leaving dust and uncertainty behind. Now what? Elijah asked. Now we wait, Silas said, and hope Garrett is smart enough to make the deal stick. They put Johnson in one of the houses, under guard but comfortable. He seemed resigned to the situation, even accepting Temperance's offer of food. The families went back to their routines, but the tension remained. As evening fell, Elijah tried again to leave. I really need to go. My dispatcher will be wondering. Your dispatcher knows exactly where you are, Hiram said, speaking for the first time in hours. This delivery was arranged specifically because you have a reputation. You keep your mouth shut. You don't ask questions. You need money for your boy. How do you know about my son? We checked. Before we approved you for this run, couldn't risk someone who might talk. Elijah felt a chill. This was all planned. Not all, Silas admitted. Garrett showing up was expected, but not this soon. We thought we'd have time to hide the weapons, make everything look legitimate. So I was bait? You were transportation. But now you're a witness, and we need witnesses in case this goes to court. I won't testify against you. No, but you'll testify about what you've seen here. The poverty, the sickness, the way the company abandoned these people then tried to force them out. Context matters in court. That night, they put Elijah in the same house as Johnson, though in a different room. The young security contractor was sitting at a table, writing in a notebook. Let her home? Elijah asked. Sort of. Documenting what I see here. These people, they're not what we were told. What were you told? That they were extremists, violent separatists, domestic terrorists. Johnson looked around the simple room, at the photos on the walls showing generations of miners. But they're just families. Desperate families fighting for the only home they've ever known. Your boss doesn't see it that way. Garrett's not a bad man. He's just following orders. The company wants this land cleared for resale. Some developer from China wants to build a resort here. Can you imagine? A resort where men died mining coal for decades. Will Garrett honor the deal? Johnson shrugged. Depends on what the company says. If they think the documents are damaging enough, maybe. If not... He didn't finish, but his meaning was clear. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the hollow at night. Somewhere a baby cried. A dog barked. Normal sounds that emphasized how abnormal their situation was. Your son, Johnson said eventually. The medical bills. How much? More than I'll make in 5 years. The company has a foundation. Medical assistance for mining families. These people probably qualify, but they don't know about it. Or the company made sure they didn't know. Why are you telling me this? Because if this goes bad tomorrow, if shooting starts, people are going to die. Good people on both sides. Maybe if there's another way. You think Silas would take money instead of land? I think Silas wants his people to survive. If the foundation could cover medical costs, maybe buy the mineral rights at fair value. You could propose that? Not me, but you could. You're neutral. Both sides might listen. Elijah thought about it. These families needed help, not a shootout with corporate security, and the company needed to avoid scandal more than they needed this land. "I'll talk to Silas in the morning," he said. But morning brought unexpected visitors. Not Garrett and legal papers, but state police. 3 cars, 6 officers, probably called by someone who'd seen the weapons being unloaded. Silas met them at the entrance to the hollow, calm but wary. "Morning, officers. Something we can help you with?" The lead officer, a sergeant by his stripes, looked tired. "Got a report of armed individuals, possible militant activity. Need to check it out." "No militants here, just mining families trying to make a living. Mind if we look around?" "You got a warrant?" "Don't need one if we have probable cause, and a truck full of weapons would be probable cause." Silas was trapped. Refuse and look guilty, comply and risk exposure of the weapons. "Tell you what," the sergeant said, his tone changing. "I grew up in a hollow just like this. My daddy died in a mine cave-in when I was 12. I know what the companies did to these communities." He looked around at the families watching from windows and doorways. "I also know that sometimes people need to protect themselves when the law won't. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to look around, check that everyone's safe, file a report saying we found nothing unusual. But those weapons better disappear, fast, because next time it might not be me who comes." Silas studied the sergeant's face, then nodded. "Understood." The police did their inspection, professional but not thorough. They checked the houses, talked to some families, ignored the crates that were now covered with tarps. Johnson stayed hidden. Elijah stayed quiet. And within an hour, the police were gone. "We need to move everything," Silas said as soon as the police cars disappeared. "They'll be back, or feds will come. We've got maybe 6 hours." The families worked fast. Weapons were loaded into trucks, documents hidden in an old mine shaft, evidence scattered to a dozen hiding places. Elijah and Johnson helped, though Elijah wondered what he was becoming part of. By noon, the hollow looked like nothing more than a poor mining community. The crates were broken down for firewood, the weapons hidden or buried, the documents sealed in waterproof containers deep underground. That's when Garrett returned. Not with papers, but with more men. 24 of them, some in uniform, others in plain clothes that didn't hide their military bearing. They surrounded the hollow before anyone could react. "Changed your mind?" Silas asked, though his calm voice didn't match the tension in his shoulders. "My bosses changed it for me," Garrett said. "They want this resolved today, permanently." "Meaning?" "Meaning you have 1 hour to evacuate. Take what you can carry, leave the rest. This is our home." "Not legally. You're squatters on company property. We've been patient, but that patience is over." The families emerged from their houses, forming a line behind Silas. Men, women, even older children, all standing defiant. Elijah saw several were armed, pistols tucked in waistbands, hunting rifles held loose but ready. "Where's Johnson?" Garrett asked. "Safe. He'll stay safe as long as you back off." "That's kidnapping, federal crime. You really want to add that to your troubles?" Johnson walked out of the house on his own, hands visible. "I'm not kidnapped. I'm staying voluntarily." Garrett stared at his man. "Johnson, what the hell are you doing?" "The right thing, sir. These people have legitimate grievances. The company poisoned their water, killed their families, then tried to force them out. That's not what I signed up to enforce." "You signed up to follow orders. Not illegal ones, not immoral ones." The standoff crystallized. Garrett's men spread out, taking tactical positions. The families did the same, using their knowledge of the terrain. Elijah found himself in the middle, physically and metaphorically. "This is going to be a massacre," he said to Garrett. "You've got superior firepower, but they know every inch of this hollow, every hidden path, every defensive position. You'll win, but how many of your men will die? How many of them? That's their choice. Is it? Or is it the company's choice? The same company that let 23 miners die rather than fix safety violations? Garrett's expression flickered. You've seen the documents. Everyone's seen them by now. Silas made copies, distributed them. Even if you take this hollow, the truth is already out there. Then why fight? Because sometimes that's all people have left, Temperance said, approaching with her hands empty but her eyes full of determination. When you've taken everything else, fighting is the only dignity remaining. There has to be another way, Johnson said. Sir, what if we actually negotiated? Real negotiation, not threats. With what authority? Call the Home Office, tell them the situation, tell them their options are a bloodbath that makes national news or a settlement that makes this go away quietly. Garrett hesitated. In that moment of uncertainty, Elijah saw an opening. I have a proposal, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. What if there was a way for everyone to win? There's no such thing, Silas said. Hear me out. The company wants this land clear, right? But what they really want is to avoid scandal. These families want to stay on their land and be compensated for what the company did to them. Go on, Garrett said cautiously. The company buys out each family. Fair market value plus compensation for health claims. The families relocate, but with enough money to start over properly. The documents stay buried. Everyone walks away. The company will never pay what these claims are worth, Garrett said. They will if the alternative is those documents going public, Silas countered. 23 wrongful deaths, massive environmental damage, cover-ups. The lawsuits alone would cost hundreds of millions. How much? Garrett asked. Silas looked at his people, seemed to be calculating. $50,000 per family for relocation, plus medical coverage for everyone affected by the contamination, maybe $3 million total. That's extortion. That's a bargain compared to what a court would award. Garrett pulled out his satellite phone, walked away to make a call. The waiting was agony. Weapons stayed ready on both sides. Children peered from windows. The sun beat down on the hollow, making everyone sweat despite the cool mountain air. 20 minutes later, Garrett returned. $10,000 per family. Medical coverage for documented illnesses only. Final offer. Not enough, Silas said immediately. It's what you're getting. Take it or we proceed with the eviction. $25,000. Full medical for everyone who worked the mine or lived in the hollow. $15,000. Medical for documented cases, plus screening for everyone else. They went back and forth while the armed men on both sides grew increasingly tense. Elijah could see fingers moving toward triggers, stances shifting toward combat readiness. Stop, Temperance said suddenly. Just stop. We're negotiating our own extinction here, arguing over the price of leaving the only home we've ever known. She turned to address everyone, both sides. My great-grandfather helped dig that mine. My grandfather died in it. My father, too. This hollow has been watered with our blood for 4 generations. And now we're supposed to just walk away for money? What's the alternative? Garrett asked, not unkindly. We stay. We work the mine ourselves. Small operation, just enough to survive. The company keeps the mineral rights but leases them to us. Cheap. Call it compensation for past damages. That's not going to happen. Why not? The company doesn't want to work this mine. Too played out, too expensive. But for us, with minimal equipment, family labor, we could make it work. Silas picked up the thread. 5-year lease, nominal fee. We maintain the property, keep squatters out, and the company avoids all the bad publicity. Garrett was quiet, calculating. I'd have to sell it to them as property management rather than mining rights. Whatever works. Another phone call. This time, Garrett was gone for almost an hour. When he returned, he looked tired but somewhat relieved. 1-year lease, renewable. You pay utilities and taxes. Any safety violations, any problems, and you're gone. The weapons disappear permanently. The documents are destroyed. 3-year initial lease, Silas countered. The documents go in a safety deposit box. If the company honors the deal, they stay there forever. 2 years. The documents go to a lawyer, sealed unless the company breaches. Silas looked at his people. One by one, they nodded. Deal. The relief was palpable. Weapons were lowered, stances relaxed. But Elijah noticed not everyone looked happy. Some of the younger men seemed disappointed, like they'd wanted the fight. "This isn't over," one of them muttered. "They'll be back. Companies always come back." "Then we'll be ready," Silas said firmly. "But today, we survive. That's what matters." The evacuation that had been threatened became instead a negotiation of details. Lawyers would be involved, papers drawn up, everything made legal. It would take weeks, but the immediate crisis was over. "You can go," Garrett told Elijah. "Forget you were here. Forget what you saw. Hard to forget something like this. Try for your own good." Elijah looked at the families, at the mine, at the hollow that had almost become a battlefield. "What about my delivery fee?" Silas actually smiled. "Hazard pay included." He handed Elijah an envelope, thick with cash. "For your son, and your silence." As Elijah climbed into his truck, Johnson approached. "You did good today. Prevented a massacre." "Did I? Or did I just delay it?" "Sometimes delay is all we get. Time to find better solutions." Elijah started his engine, began the long reverse down the narrow road. In his mirrors, he could see the families already getting back to their lives. Children emerging from hiding, women starting cook fires, men heading toward the mine entrance. They'd won a reprieve, nothing more. 2 years to prove they could make it work. 2 years before the company found another reason to force them out. But for people who'd been living day to day, 2 years was a lifetime. The drive out of the mountains felt longer than the drive in. Every shadow could hide an ambush that wasn't coming. Every vehicle could be carrying men intent on ensuring his silence. But nothing happened. He reached the interstate unmolested, joined the flow of normal traffic, became just another trucker hauling freight. That night, in a motel outside Raleigh, he counted the money Silas had given him. $20,000. Enough for a down payment on his son's treatment. Blood money, some would call it. He called it survival. The news never reported anything about the hollow. No mention of armed standoffs or corporate malfeasance. Whatever lawyers got involved, they kept it quiet. The documents stayed sealed, the weapons stayed hidden, and life went on. But Elijah kept track. Every few months he'd check on the hollow. The families were still there, still working the mine with equipment held together by determination and welding rod. The company hadn't returned yet. The peace held, fragile as it was. A year later, his son recovering from successful surgery, Elijah got a call. Unknown number, but he recognized the voice. "We need another delivery," Silas said. "Legitimate this time. Mining equipment, real stuff. You interested?" "Same place?" "Same place. We're actually making a go of it. Small operation, but profitable. Enough to keep everyone fed." "The company?" "Renewed our lease. Turns out we're cheaper than security guards for keeping the property intact." Elijah thought about it. The money would be good, and legitimate work was always better than the alternative. "Standard rates?" "Plus a bonus, for old time's sake." He took the job. The drive into the mountains was different this time. No surveillance, no weapons, no standoff. Just a business transaction between people who'd found a way to coexist with forces bigger than themselves. The hollow looked better. Some houses had new roofs. The equipment was still old, but better maintained. Children played in the yards without that haunted look of kids who'd seen too much. Temperance met him with real coffee and a genuine smile. "Your son?" "Doing well. Growing stronger." "Good. Family's what matters." As they unloaded actual mining equipment, Silas told him about their progress. They'd found a small vein of quality coal, enough to keep them going. Some of the younger men had left. found work elsewhere, but the core families remained. "It's not much of a life," Silas admitted, "but it's ours." "What about Garrett, the security teams?" "Garrett got promoted, moved to corporate, sends a Christmas card every year." "You're joking." "I'm not. Turns out preventing a massacre looks good on a resume. He even helped push through the lease renewal." It was a strange ending to what could have been a tragedy. No clear heroes or villains, just people trying to survive in a system that didn't value their survival. The families got their hollow, the company avoided scandal, and life went on. But Elijah knew it was temporary. Everything was. The coal would run out. The company would change hands. New developers would eye the land. Someday, another confrontation would come. For now, though, there was peace in the hollow. Fragile, conditional, but real. And sometimes, that's the best anyone can hope for. 2 years passed. Elijah made regular runs to the hollow, hauling equipment in, hauling coal out. The operation remained small but functional. The families survived, which was more than many mining communities could say. Then the letters started arriving. Silas called him on a Tuesday night, voice tense. "Got something from the state. Environmental inspection notice. Comprehensive review. The kind that could shut us down." "Routine?" "Nothing's routine when lawyers are copied on the notice. The company's up to something." Elijah was scheduled for a delivery that Thursday. When he arrived, the hollow was transformed. State officials were everywhere, taking water samples, soil samples, measuring air quality. Men in suits documented everything with cameras and clipboards. Silas stood by the mine entrance, watching it all with crossed arms and a dark expression. "They're looking for violations," he said when Elijah approached. "Any excuse to void the lease." "Find anything?" "There's always something. Equipment not up to code, safety procedures not documented properly, storage of chemicals. If you look hard enough, you'll find violations." A state inspector approached, young woman with her hair pulled back severe, clipboard ready. "You're operating a vehicle on mine property. I need to see permits, insurance, hazmat certification." Elijah handed over his documents, all in order. She examined them like she was looking for forgery. "This truck delivered equipment flagged in our investigation. Serial numbers match items reported stolen from a warehouse in Kentucky. I haul what I'm hired to haul. Bills of sale are with the customer." She made notes, took photos of his truck, his license plate, him. "You'll be contacted for a statement." After she left, Silas pulled Elijah aside. "That equipment wasn't stolen. We bought it at auction, but the paperwork got confused, numbers transcribed wrong. They're manufacturing violations." "Why now? After 2 years?" "The lease is up for renewal, and the land value has tripled. New interstate spur is going in 20 miles south. Suddenly this hollow is worth developing." Same old story. Different chapter, same story. Over the next week, the inspections intensified. OSHA arrived, then EPA, then ATF asking about explosive storage. Each agency found violations, some legitimate, most marginal. The fines started stacking up. 1,000 here, 5,000 there, more than the mine made in profit. Temperance started a ledger, tracking every fine, every violation, every inspector. A pattern emerged. "Look at this," she told Silas and Elijah. "Every inspector has connections to Blackwood Coal. Former employees, contractors, one's married to a board member's daughter." "That's conspiracy to harass," Elijah said. "Prove it," Silas replied bitterly. "They've got lawyers, we've got suspicious coincidences." The families started to fracture under the pressure. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to take whatever buyout was offered and leave. The unity that had held them together was cracking. Then Hiram had his accident. He was working alone in the mine, routine maintenance, when a support beam failed. By the time they got him out, his left leg was crushed beyond repair. The hospital in Charleston saved his life, but not the leg. The state inspector arrived before Hiram was even out of surgery. "Negligent safety practices," she announced. "This mine is closed pending full investigation." "One accident in 2 years," Silas protested. "Mines operating under Blackwood had dozens." "Those mines had proper insurance, safety protocols, documented training. You have none of that." She posted closure notices, had state troopers enforce them. The families could only watch as their livelihood was padlocked. That night, they gathered in Silas's house. The mood was funeral dark. Hiram's wife wept quietly in the corner. The children had been sent to stay with relatives, sensing something bad was coming. "We could fight it in court," someone suggested. "With what money? Legal fees would bankrupt us in a month." "We could go to the media." "And say what? That we're being persecuted? We're nobody. The company has PR firms, connections." Elijah sat quietly, thinking. Then he remembered something Johnson had said 2 years ago. "What about the documents? The ones proving the company's environmental crimes?" "In a safety deposit box in Charleston," Silas said. "But we agreed not to use them if the company honored the lease." "Have they honored it? Really? Setting up false inspections, manufacturing violations? Prove they're behind it." "We don't have to. Just the threat might be enough." Temperance looked up. "Mutually assured destruction. Something like that?" They argued through the night. Some wanted to release everything, consequences be damned. Others feared retaliation. Finally, they reached a decision. Elijah would carry a message. Not to Garrett, who'd moved beyond their reach, but to the company's regional office. A simple message. Back off, or the documents go public. He drove to the office building in Charleston, a glass tower that seemed to scrape the sky. Security tried to stop him, but he said the magic words, "Harrow County documents." Within minutes, he was in a top-floor conference room facing 3 lawyers and a woman who introduced herself only as Ms. Chen from corporate. "You have something to say?" she asked. "The families in Harrow County have documents proving 23 wrongful deaths and massive environmental contamination. They've kept them sealed as agreed. But if this harassment continues, that changes." "What harassment?" "State inspections are routine. Inspections by people connected to your company aren't routine. They're targeted." "That's a serious accusation." "It's an observation. Here's another. The mine can be reopened with the right permits and insurance. That'll cost maybe $50,000. Cheaper than the millions you'll lose if those documents surface." Ms. Chen studied him with cold calculation. "You're nobody, a truck driver. Why should we listen to you?" "Because I'm nobody. I have nothing to lose. No corporate position, no reputation to protect. Just a truck and a willingness to drive those documents to every news outlet in the state. That would be blackmail. That would be journalism, whistleblowing, protected activity." She was quiet for a long moment. "What exactly are you proposing?" "The inspections stop. The mine reopens. The lease gets renewed for 5 years. The families get left alone. In exchange for? The documents stay sealed. The families keep working. Everyone pretends this conversation never happened. I'll need to consult with others. You have 48 hours, then we start making copies." Elijah left the building expecting to be arrested, detained, something. But nothing happened. He drove back to the hollow and reported the conversation. "Think they'll deal?" Silas asked. "Depends on how damaging they think those documents really are." They waited. 48 hours became 72. Then a week. No word from the company, but something else happened. The state inspections stopped. The violation notices were withdrawn. The mine reopening was approved pending administrative review. Then Garrett called, his personal number, not corporate. "You've got balls," he said to Elijah. "Threatening the company like that wasn't a threat, was negotiation. Same thing in corporate speak." He paused. "The mine will reopen. The lease will be renewed. 3 years, not 5. The families need to incorporate, get proper insurance, follow actual safety protocols. And the harassment? What harassment? Just unfortunate bureaucratic oversight. These things happen. And if they happen again? They won't. The company has decided that particular property isn't worth the trouble. Officially, it's a PR gesture, supporting traditional mining families. Good optics. And unofficially? Unofficially, those documents are more damaging than you know. Names on them reach high. People who'd rather stay unreached. The mine reopened a month later. Hiram returned on crutches, working the equipment with one leg and determination. The families incorporated as the Harrow County Mining Cooperative, got insurance through a program for small operations, even hired a safety consultant to ensure compliance. It wasn't perfect. The coal was still limited, the equipment still old, the life still hard. But it was theirs, legally now, protected by papers and lawyers instead of just guns and determination. Elijah kept hauling for them, in and out, equipment and coal, maintaining the connection between the hollow and the outside world. He became part of their extended family, invited to celebrations, consulted on decisions. 5 years later, when the coal finally played out completely, they were ready. The younger generation had been getting educated, trained in other work. The mine closure was planned, not forced. The families transitioned to other jobs, some leaving the hollow, others staying and commuting to nearby towns. Silas and Temperance bought the land when the company finally sold, using savings from the mining operation and a loan from, ironically, a program Garrett had told them about. They turned part of it into a memorial, a museum of sorts, documenting the history of coal mining in the region. Elijah delivered the last load of coal from the Harrow County mine on a cold December morning. The families gathered to watch, understanding they were witnessing the end of an era. "No regrets?" he asked Silas. "Plenty of regrets, but no surrender. We fought, we survived, we chose our own ending. That's more than most mining families get." As Elijah drove away that final time, he saw them in his mirrors. Standing by the sealed mine entrance, the families who'd fought a corporation and won, even if winning looked different than they'd imagined. The documents that had been their weapons stayed sealed in that safety deposit box. Eventually, they were destroyed, the crimes they documented passing the statute of limitations. But they'd served their purpose, buying time and dignity for people who'd had little of either. Elijah never hauled for a mining operation again. But sometimes, driving through the mountains, he'd think about the Harrow County families, about how they'd stood against forces so much bigger than themselves and found a way to survive. The hollow still exists, houses still standing, though fewer families live there now. The mine entrance is sealed with concrete, a plaque beside it listing the names of all who died in its depths. Sometimes tourists stop, take pictures, buy crafts from the few families who remain. It's not the ending anyone expected when Elijah first drove that suspicious load up the mountain, but it's an ending they chose for themselves, and in the harsh mathematics of Appalachian survival that counts as victory. The state trooper's flashlight cut through the evening drizzle as he directed traffic away from Route 58. "A massive landslide," he explained, walking up to Zachariah's window. Half the mountain had come down. Road would be closed until morning at least, maybe longer. Zachariah looked at his delivery schedule, then at the dashboard clock showing 7:47 p.m. 40,000 pounds of premium lumber in his trailer, due in Charlotte by 6 a.m. The penalty for late delivery would eat his profit for the entire month. "Any alternate routes?" he asked the trooper. The officer scratched his jaw, rain dripping from his hat. "There's an old logging road through Trawler's Gap. Rough going, but passable if you're careful, though I wouldn't recommend it for a rig your size." "How rough?" "Gravel mostly, some dirt sections. The logging companies still use it occasionally. Your call, but I'd find a motel if I were you." Zachariah had been driving these mountains for 15 years. He'd handled worse roads in worse conditions. The math was simple. Make the delivery on time or lose his contract with the lumber yard. The turnoff was barely marked, just a wooden sign so weathered the letters were almost gone. The pavement ended immediately, replaced by gravel that had seen better decades. His Peterbilt groaned as he downshifted, easing into the first curve. The trees pressed in close, branches scraping the sides of his trailer. In his headlights, he could see deep ruts carved by logging trucks, filled with muddy water from the rain. He kept it slow, maybe 15 miles per hour, feeling the trailer want to slide on the loose surface. 5 miles in, the road forked. No signs, no indication which way led through. The left fork showed more wear, deeper ruts, suggesting regular use. He took it, figuring active use meant it went somewhere. The grade steepened, his engine working harder. The rain was picking up, turning the dirt sections into mud. More than once, he felt the wheels slip, the 40,000 pounds of lumber pushing him toward the edge where the mountain dropped off into darkness. Then he saw lights ahead. Not vehicle lights, fires, torches or lanterns arranged across the road. As he got closer, he could make out figures standing between them. He stopped the truck 20 feet away, keeping the engine running. A man approached his window. Middle-aged, wearing work clothes that had seen hard use, carrying an axe loose in his hand. Not threatening exactly, but definitely present. "Road's closed," the man said. "State trooper said it was open. Landslide has the main route blocked. Trooper was wrong. This is private property. The county map shows it as a public road." The man smiled without humor. "County map shows a lot of things that aren't true anymore. You need to turn around." "Can't turn around on this narrow road with a full trailer. Need to find a wide spot." More men emerged from the darkness between the trees. A dozen at least, all carrying tools that could be weapons. They surrounded the truck, not aggressive but definitely coordinated. "Follow us," the first man said. "There's a place you can turn around up ahead." Zachariah didn't have much choice. The men with lanterns walked in front, leading him further up the mountain. But instead of a turnaround, the road led to a clearing with buildings scattered around. A logging camp, but not a modern one. The structures looked decades old, built from the timber they'd been cutting. A younger man stood by a large fire pit, maybe 35, built like someone who'd grown up swinging an axe. Dark hair, clean-shaven, with the kind of presence that marked him as the leader. "You lost?" he asked as Zachariah climbed down from his cab. "Just trying to get through to 58 on the other side. Got a delivery to make." "What kind of delivery?" "Lumber. Premium white pine for a construction project in Charlotte." The man walked over to Zachariah's trailer, ran his hand along the side. "White pine from the Garrett tract?" "I don't know what tract. I just pick up and deliver." "Yeah, you do. But that lumber you're carrying? It was supposed to be ours. We had a contract for those trees. Cut them, marked them, then the land got sold out from under us." "I don't know anything about that." "Course not. You're just the last link in the chain." He turned to address the others who'd gathered. "This is what they do. Promise us work, let us start cutting, then sell to someone who undercuts our price by a few dollars." An older man approached, moving carefully like his joints hurt. "You're wasting time, Josiah. Driver doesn't care about our problems." "Maybe he should, Amos. Maybe everyone should know what's happening up here." A woman emerged from one of the buildings, tall, lean, with red hair and an air of authority. She walked straight to Josiah, put a hand on his arm. "Not like this," she said quietly. Then how deliverance? We've tried legal channels. Tried negotiation. Not by robbing innocent drivers. Who said anything about robbing? Josiah turned to Zachariah. We're not thieves. But that lumber you're carrying was cut with our sweat. We deserve compensation. Take it up with whoever bought the land. We did. They laughed. Said contracts with the previous owner weren't their problem. The rain was getting heavier, turning the cleared ground into mud. Zachariah could see more people watching from doorways. Women, children. This wasn't just a logging camp. It was a community. Look, Zachariah said, I sympathize, but I've got a job to do. Bills to pay, family to feed. So do we, Amos said. 43 people in this camp, 3 generations of logging families. This mountain is all we know. The lumber companies are pushing us out, Josiah explained. Buying the land, bringing in outside crews who work cheaper, leaving us with nothing. That's not my problem. No, but you're here now. Part of it, whether you like it or not. One of the men ran up, whispered urgently in Josiah's ear. His expression darkened. Company, he announced. 3 trucks coming up the road. The camp erupted into motion. Women gathered children. Men grabbed rifles that had been leaning against buildings. In seconds, the peaceful camp became a defensive position. Who's coming? Zachariah asked. Probably the real owners of that lumber, Josiah said. Coming to make sure it gets delivered. 3 pickup trucks pulled into the clearing, men stepping out with the confidence of those who knew they had authority. The lead was tall, wearing a jacket with a lumber company logo. East Coast Timber Corp. Josiah, he said, voice carrying clear authority. We heard there might be trouble up here tonight. No trouble, Wagner. Just a driver who got lost. Wagner looked at Zachariah's truck, at the gathered loggers, at the weapons now visible. That's our lumber he's carrying. Lumber cut from trees we marked. Trees on land we own. Your contract was with the previous owner, not our problem. The tension ratcheted up. Zachariah counted guns on both sides. The lumber company men were outnumbered but better armed. This was about to go very wrong. I don't want any trouble, Zachariah said loudly. I'm just trying to make a delivery. And you will, Wagner said. These people are going to let you pass. Aren't you, Josiah? That depends. You willing to honor our original contract? That contract's void. You know that. Then we've got a problem. Wagner pulled out a phone. 1 call and state police flood this mountain. You want that? Want your families seeing you hauled off? Your kids in foster care? You threatening our children? Deliverance stepped forward, and there was something dangerous in her stance. I'm explaining consequences. A child started crying in one of the buildings. The sound cut through the tension, reminding everyone what was really at stake. Let him through, Amos said quietly. This isn't the fight. Listen to the old man, Wagner said. Live to log another day. Josiah stood silent for a long moment, rain running down his face. Then he stepped aside. Road gets narrow about 3 miles up. Hug the mountainside, not the drop. That's it? One of the younger loggers protested. We just let them win? For tonight, Josiah said, not taking his eyes off Wagner. Wagner smiled. Smart choice, driver. Follow us. We'll make sure you get through safe. Zachariah climbed back into his cab, started the engine. As he pulled out, following Wagner's trucks, he saw the defeat in the loggers' faces. 3 generations of workers watching their livelihood drive away. The road did narrow where Josiah had said. Zachariah had to concentrate fully, keeping the heavy trailer from sliding toward the edge. Wagner's truck stayed close, making sure he didn't stop or turn back. 3 hours later, he reached the other side of the mountain, connected with Route 58 beyond the landslide. Wagner's trucks peeled off without a word, their job done. Zachariah made his delivery on time, collected his payment, tried to forget the faces of those logging families. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been part of something wrong. A week later, he saw the news. A logging camp in the mountains had been raided by state police. Weapons found, arrests made. The report called them anti-government militants and violent separatists. But Zachariah had seen them. Families trying to survive, workers pushed out by corporate interests, people who'd turned desperate when legal channels failed. He'd delivered their lumber to Charlotte, where it would become expensive homes for people who'd never know its real cost. The news report stayed with Zachariah. 7 arrested, including Josiah. The camp destroyed, families scattered, children placed in protective custody. All over lumber that was already framed into someone's vacation home. 2 weeks later, his dispatcher offered him another run through the same area. Different cargo, construction equipment heading to a new development. The pay was excellent, but Zachariah hesitated. "Something wrong with the road?" the dispatcher asked. "Just heard there was trouble up that way. Arrests and such." "That's all sorted now. The troublemakers are locked up. Route's clear." Zachariah took the job, though he wasn't sure why. Maybe curiosity, maybe guilt. The landslide had been cleared. Route 58 was open, but he found himself taking the logging road anyway. The camp was destroyed, as the news had reported. Buildings knocked down, fire pit filled with dirt. But there were people there, picking through the wreckage. Women and children mostly, loading salvageable items into old trucks. He recognized Deliverance immediately, her red hair visible even in the fading light. She looked up as his truck approached, no surprise on her face. "Come to see the damage?" she asked when he climbed down. "Came to, I don't know, apologize, maybe." "For what? Doing your job?" "For being part of the system that destroyed this place." She studied him for a moment. "You had no choice. Neither did we in the end." "Where is everyone?" "Josiah and 6 others are in county lockup, charged with conspiracy, weapons violations, threatening interstate commerce. The lawyers say they'll get 5 to 10 years. That's insane. They were just trying to protect their livelihood." "That's not how the law sees it." She gestured at the destroyed camp. 43 people lived here. Now we're scattered. Some went to relatives, some to shelters. Some are living in their trucks. An older woman approached, carrying a box of salvaged cooking supplies. It was Amos's wife, though Zachariah hadn't known her name. "The driver," she said, recognizing him. "Come back to gloat?" "He came to help," Deliverance said firmly, though Zachariah hadn't offered. "Help? How can he help?" "I have a truck," Zachariah said. "I can haul things, people, whatever you need." The woman laughed bitterly. "Unless you can haul us back in time, there's nothing you can do." But Deliverance was thinking. "Actually, there might be something. How much weight can your trailer hold?" 40,000 pounds legally. Why? "We salvaged some equipment. Chainsaws, tools, a portable sawmill. It's not much, but it's what we have left. Problem is, we have nowhere to take it." "Where would you want it taken?" "There's a piece of land in Kentucky. Amos owns it, inherited from his father. It's not much, 40 acres of second-growth timber, but it's ours. We could start over there." "That's a long haul." "We can pay. A little. We pooled what money we had." Zachariah thought about his schedule, his commitments, his dispatcher who'd be furious if he went off route. Then he thought about those families, scattered and broken. "Keep your money. Load what you have." They worked through the night, loading everything salvageable. The portable sawmill, tools, personal belongings, anything that might help them start over. Some of the children helped, silent and hollow-eyed from watching their world destroyed. As dawn broke, 3 trucks and Zachariah's rig formed a convoy. Maybe 15 people total, all that remained of the camp's 43. The rest had already scattered. given up, moved on. The drive to Kentucky took 8 hours. The land, when they reached it, wasn't much. 40 acres of scraggly, second-growth forest, a creek running through it, an old cabin that hadn't been lived in for decades. But it was theirs. "It's not much," Amos said. He'd been at a relative's house, arrived when Deliverance called. His face showed the strain of watching his community destroyed. "It's a start," Deliverance said firmly. "We've got tools, we've got timber, we've got hands to work. We've got no contracts, no buyers, no capital. We'll figure it out." They unloaded Zachariah's trailer, setting up the sawmill near the creek where they could use water power. The families started clearing space for temporary shelters. It was pathetic compared to what they'd lost, but it was something. "Why are you helping us?" Deliverance asked Zachariah as they watched the others work. "Because I was part of destroying what you had. Least I can do is help you rebuild. You weren't part of it. You were just a tool they used. Same result." She was quiet for a moment. "You could do more if you wanted." "How?" "You drive these mountains all the time. You know people, companies, contractors. We need work, contracts, connections, things we lost when they branded us criminals." "I'm just a trucker." "You're a trucker with a conscience. That's rarer than you think." Zachariah stayed for 3 days, helping set up the sawmill, clear land, repair the cabin. On the 3rd night, Deliverance showed him papers she'd been hiding. "These are contracts," she said. "Legal agreements between our cooperative and 3 lumber companies. They're scared to honor them now after the arrests, but the contracts are still valid." "What do you want me to do?" "Deliver a message. Tell them we're still in business, still able to fulfill orders, just from a different location." "They won't listen to me." "They might. You're neutral, not one of us. You can say you've seen our operation, that we're legitimate." "Are you?" She looked at him steadily. "We're as legitimate as any small logging operation, more honest than most. We replant what we cut. We don't clear cut. We respect the forest." "And if Josiah gets out?" He seemed pretty angry about the situation. "Josiah's looking at 7 years minimum. By the time he's out, either we'll have succeeded here or failed. Either way, the fight will be over." Zachariah took the contracts, spent the next week visiting the companies. 2 refused to even see him, but the 3rd, a small operation in Tennessee, heard him out. "You're vouching for these people?" the owner asked. "I'm saying they can do the work. They've got the equipment and the expertise. They've also got members in federal prison for protecting their camp, not for bad business practices." The owner considered. "Small order first. 50,000 board feet of poplar. They deliver on time, to spec. We'll consider more." It wasn't much, but it was a start. When Zachariah brought the news back to the Kentucky land, Deliverance actually smiled. "We can do that. Might take everything we've got, but we can do it." They did. Working 18-hour days, the remaining families cut, milled, and dried the lumber. Zachariah hauled it to Tennessee, the buyer was satisfied, and more orders followed. Within 6 months, they had a functioning operation. Nothing like what they'd had before, but enough to survive on. The children were in school, the families had basic housing, and there was hope. Then Wagner showed up. He arrived in the same truck he'd driven that night at the original camp. Same confident swagger, same assumption of authority. "Heard you folks were back in business?" he said, looking around at their small operation. "Legal business," Deliverance said. "We've got all the permits." "I'm not here about permits. I'm here about competition." "We're no competition to East Coast Timber." "Not yet, but you're undercutting our prices, taking our contracts." "We're taking contracts you don't want. Small jobs, specialty wood." "Still our potential business." Wagner walked around, examining their equipment. Nice setup for people who supposedly have nothing. We work hard. So did Josiah. Look where that got him. The threat was clear. Zachariah stepped forward. They're operating legally. You've got no grounds to interfere. Wagner turned to him. The trucker should have known you'd be involved. You know interfering with interstate commerce is a federal crime. So is harassment and conspiracy to destroy competition. Prove it. Don't have to. Just have to make enough noise that authorities start looking at your operations. Bet they'd find interesting things. Wagner studied him, calculating. You're nobody. A truck driver. That's right. Nobody with nothing to lose and a lot of connections in the transportation industry. Every trucker in 3 states knows my name. Want them all talking about East Coast Timber's business practices? It was mostly bluff, but Wagner didn't know that. He looked around at the small operation, at the families working hard to rebuild their lives. This isn't over, he said finally. It is for today, Deliverance said firmly. Wagner left, but everyone knew he'd be back. Men like him always came back. We need protection, Amos said that night. Legal protection. Lawyers cost money we don't have, Deliverance pointed out. Then we need something else. Leverage. Zachariah had an idea. What if you weren't competing with East Coast? What if you were subcontracting? They'd never agree to that. They might if the alternative was worse, if their biggest clients started asking questions about their labor practices, their environmental record. We don't have those connections. No, but I do. Every major construction company in the region uses truckers like me. We talk, word spreads. It took 2 months of careful rumors, strategic conversations at truck stops, and a few well-placed suggestions to construction foremen. Soon, East Coast Timber was getting questions they didn't want to answer. Wagner came back, this time with lawyers and an offer. Subcontracting agreement, he said, dropping papers on the makeshift desk in the cabin. You work for us, exclusively. We set prices, you fill orders. That's slavery, not subcontracting, Deliverance said. It's survival. Take it or we'll bury you in legal challenges. Give us a week to consider. After Wagner left, they studied the contract. It was awful. Would basically make them employees without benefits. But buried in the legal language was something interesting. Look at this clause, Deliverance said, pointing to a section near the end. Exclusive subcontracting except for existing contracts. We don't have existing contracts, Amos pointed out. Not yet, but we have a week. They worked the phones for days, calling every small construction company, furniture maker, and lumber yard in 3 states. Most wouldn't even talk to them once they heard who they were. But a few listened, and 3 actually signed contracts, small ones, but legally binding. When Wagner returned, Deliverance had the contracts ready. We'll sign, she said, but with modifications. These existing contracts are exempt. Wagner examined the contracts, his face reddening. These are dated this week. You're trying to circumvent the agreement. We're protecting our existing business relationships. Your contract doesn't forbid that. It will once our lawyers revise it. Then we won't sign. And you'll explain to your clients why a small family operation is worth destroying your reputation over. Wagner wanted to argue, but his lawyers pulled him aside. After a heated, whispered conversation, he returned. Fine. Those 3 contracts are exempt, but nothing else. Every other piece of wood you cut goes through us. It was a terrible deal, but it kept them alive. They signed. For 6 months, it worked. The families fulfilled East Coast's orders, taking whatever price was offered, grateful just to be working. The 3 independent contracts barely kept them afloat, but they were something. Then Zachariah got a call from the Tennessee buyer. East Coast is pressuring me to cancel your contract. They're threatening to cut off my supply if I keep buying from you. That's illegal. Restraint of trade. Prove it. Meanwhile, I lose my business. One by one, the independent contracts were canceled. Not officially because of East Coast's pressure, but everyone knew the truth. We're trapped, Amos said at what passed for a meeting in the repaired cabin. They own us now. Not yet, Deliverance said, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. That's when the letter arrived. A lawyer from Washington, D.C., representing a nonprofit focused on rural workers' rights. They'd heard about the situation, wanted to help. Probably a scam, Amos said. Or a trap, someone else suggested. But Zachariah recognized the lawyer's name. She's real. Took on coal companies in West Virginia. Won. The lawyer, Patricia Chen, arrived 2 days later. Young, Asian American, wearing jeans and boots instead of a suit. She looked around the operation with sharp eyes, taking notes. You're being subjected to monopsony control, she said after reviewing all the documents. One buyer controlling all your sales. It's legally questionable. Can you prove it? Maybe. But lawsuits take years. You need immediate help. We need a miracle. Or media attention. Your story, told right, could generate public pressure. We tried that before. They painted us as militants. That was before. Now you're struggling families trying to rebuild. Different narrative. Patricia brought in a journalist, someone she trusted. He spent a week with them, documenting their story. The article, when it came out, went viral. The forgotten families of Appalachian logging spread across social media, generating outrage about corporate exploitation. East Coast's response was swift. Wagner arrived with a termination notice. Breach of contract. Speaking to media without permission. Show me where the contract forbids media contact, Patricia challenged. Implied confidentiality. Implied doesn't hold up in court. We'll see about that. The legal battle that followed was brutal. East Coast had resources, lawyers, connections, but Patricia had something else. Public opinion and a network of nonprofit support. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of East Coast's own employees, disgusted by what he'd seen, leaked internal documents to Patricia. They showed a pattern of deliberately destroying small competitors, price fixing, and illegal market manipulation. This is enough for federal investigation, Patricia said, studying the documents. If we use them, that employee gets destroyed, Deliverance pointed out. Not if we're smart about it. They leaked the documents anonymously to multiple news outlets simultaneously. The story exploded. Federal investigators arrived within a week. Wagner came one last time, but now he was the one looking desperate. We can make a deal. Real partnership. Fair prices. Too late, Deliverance said simply. East Coast Timber was indicted on multiple federal charges. The investigation revealed decades of illegal practices. The company eventually settled for millions, a portion of which went to the families they destroyed. It wasn't enough to bring back what was lost, but it was enough to build something new. The families pooled their settlement money, bought more land, created a true cooperative. They hired other displaced logging families, built a sustainable operation that respected both workers and forest. Josiah got out after serving 4 years, his sentence reduced on appeal. He returned to find a thriving operation, his anger tempered by time and the reality that they'd won through law, not violence. You did it, he said to Deliverance. We did it. All of us. Zachariah continued hauling for them, watching the cooperative grow from 15 people to 50, then 100. They bought more land, always sustainably managed, always worker-owned. 5 years after that night on the logging road, Zachariah stood in the same spot where he'd first been stopped. The road was paved now, properly maintained. A sign marked it as Cooperative Road, maintained by the worker-owned logging operation that had become a model for others. Ever regret getting involved? Deliverance asked, standing beside him. Never. That detour changed everything. For us, too. The trees had grown back where the old camp had been, young growth reaching toward the sky. Nobody lived there now, but there was a memorial. A simple plaque listing the names of all the logging families displaced by corporate greed, and a line at the bottom. They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. Wagner had disappeared after East Coast's collapse. Some said to Canada, others to prison. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was that the families had survived, thrived even. There are other camps, Deliverance said. Other families being pushed out. We're helping them now, sharing what we learned. The cooperative model? More than that. The importance of documentation, legal support, media strategy, and the value of unexpected allies. She looked at him meaningfully. Zachariah had become more than just a trucker to them. He was part of their story, their struggle, their victory. What's next? He asked. Expansion. Not just logging, but processing, furniture making, direct sales. Cut out all the middlemen. Ambitious. Necessary. The only way to truly protect workers is to own the entire chain. A truck rumbled past, heading up the mountain. One of theirs, carrying lumber that would be sold at fair prices, cut by workers earning living wages, from forests that would be there for generations to come. Sometimes I think about that night, Zachariah said. If the landslide hadn't happened, if I hadn't taken this detour, someone else would have. The confrontation was inevitable, but maybe it wouldn't have ended as well. You think it ended well? People went to prison, families were destroyed, and rebuilt stronger. Sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what's really important. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun set over the mountains, the same mountains that had seen so much struggle, so much loss, but also so much resilience. I should go, Zachariah said. Got a load to pick up. From us? Always from you. As long as you'll have me. You're family now. Family is forever. As he drove away, Zachariah thought about that word. Family. He'd started as just a trucker caught in someone else's fight. Now he was part of something bigger. A movement, maybe, or just a group of people who'd refused to be destroyed. The logging road was busy now, trucks moving in both directions. Not just their trucks, but others too. Small operations inspired by their success. Worker cooperatives sprouting across Appalachia like those seeds Deliverance had mentioned. His phone rang. Another driver asking about routes, rates, which companies to trust. Zachariah gave advice, shared warnings, connected people who needed connecting. He'd become, without meaning to, a node in a network of resistance against corporate exploitation. The lumber in his trailer was headed to a housing development in Richmond. But this time, he knew exactly where it came from, who cut it, what they were paid. The chain of exploitation had been broken, replaced by something more just. It hadn't been easy. People had suffered. Some were still in prison. Families had been torn apart. But they'd survived and found a way to build something better from the wreckage. 10 years had passed since that first night on the logging road. Zachariah was sitting in a diner outside Knoxville when his phone rang. Deliverance's voice was strained. Josiah's dead. The words hit like a physical blow. What happened? Heart attack. Working in the woods, just collapsed. He was only 48. I'm coming. That's why I called. He left something for you. The funeral was held at the original site where the camp had been. Hundreds came. Not just the logging families, but truckers, lawyers, journalists, everyone who'd been part of the struggle. The cooperative had grown to over 300 members across 5 states, all because of what Josiah and the others had started. After the service, Deliverance handed Zachariah an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and a deed. Read it, she said. The letter was dated a month before Josiah's death. Zachariah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Heart problems run in my family. My father died at 50, his father at 45. I made it to 48, so I count myself lucky. I was angry at you that first night. You represented everything destroying our way of life. But you came back. You helped when you didn't have to. You became family. The deed is for 20 acres adjoining the cooperative land. It's yours. Not for logging, but for remembering. Build something there. A museum, maybe, or just a place where truckers can rest and remember that they're part of the story, too. The fight's not over. It's never over. But it's different now. We're not just fighting against something, we're building something better. You were part of that building. Take care of Deliverance and the others. They'll need steady friends in the years to come. Your brother in struggle, Josiah. Zachariah stood on the 20 acres that afternoon. It was beautiful land, a mix of forest and meadow with a view of the valley below. He could see the cooperative's operation in the distance, hear the sound of sustainable logging, careful and measured. "What will you do with it?" Deliverance asked. What he suggested. Build something, a place for remembering. It took 2 years to build. Zachariah used his savings plus donations from truckers across the region who'd heard the story. The building was simple, a large wooden structure built from cooperative lumber, with space for meetings, a small museum of logging history, and a bunkhouse where truckers could rest for free. They called it the Crossroads Center. On the walls, they put photos and stories, not just of the struggle, but of all the forgotten workers who'd built these mountains. Loggers, truckers, miners, the invisible people who did the hard work while others got rich. Patricia Chen came to the opening, now a federal judge. The journalist who'd written the first article was there, now documenting the nationwide movement of worker cooperatives. Even some former East Coast employees came, having found new work with operations that treated them fairly. Josiah would have loved this, Amos said. He was in his 70s now, too old for active logging, but still sharp, still involved. A place where the story gets told true. The center became more than just a memorial. It hosted meetings where workers organized, classes where people learned cooperative management, gatherings where strategies were shared. It became the heart of a movement that spread far beyond logging. Zachariah semi-retired, keeping only a few regular runs, spending more time at the center. He became the unofficial historian, collecting stories from truckers and loggers, documenting the struggles and victories. One evening, a young trucker stopped by, maybe 25, nervous, carrying a burden he couldn't quite articulate. "I've been hauling for a company," he said. "Moving stuff I know is wrong, equipment to clear-cut old growth, chemicals that poison streams. But I need the money. Got a sick kid." Zachariah recognized himself 20 years younger. "What's your name?" "Marcus." "Sit down, Marcus. Let me tell you a story about a detour I took once." He told the whole story. The camp, the families, the struggle, the victory that came from ordinary people refusing to accept defeat. Marcus listened, his face changing from despair to something like hope. "So what do I do?" "You decide what you can live with, but know this. There are alternatives. The cooperative's always looking for reliable truckers. Pay might be less at first, but you'll sleep better." Marcus left with contact information and something more valuable, the knowledge that he wasn't alone, that others had faced the same choices and found a way through. More truckers came, some looking for work, others for absolution, many just for connection. The center became a way station for the conscience of an industry. 5 years after the center opened, a developer approached about buying the land. The offer was enormous, enough to set up Zachariah for life. "Not for sale," he said without hesitation. "Everything's for sale at the right price." "No, some things are beyond price. This land, these stories, this movement, they're not commodities." The developer left frustrated. But Zachariah knew he'd be back, or others like him. The pressure never stopped, just changed form. That night, there was a meeting at the center. Representatives from cooperatives across Appalachia planning a response to new legislation that threatened their existence. Deliverance ran the meeting with the same fierce efficiency she'd shown from the beginning. "They're trying to classify cooperatives as cartels," she explained. "Make our profit sharing illegal, force us back into traditional corporate structures." "How do we fight it?" someone asked. "Same way we always have. Organization, documentation, public pressure, and refusing to back down." They strategized late into the night. Legal challenges, media campaigns, political lobbying. The tools had become more sophisticated, but the struggle remained the same. Workers fighting for dignity against systems designed to exploit them. Zachariah listened, occasionally offering insights from his decades on the road. He'd become an elder statesman of sorts. His story part of the movement's mythology. As the meeting ended and people dispersed to their vehicles, Deliverance lingered. "Josiah would be proud," she said, "what we've built here." "He'd probably be planning the next fight." "That too," she smiled sadly. "I miss his anger sometimes. It was cleaner than this constant negotiation. But less effective. Maybe. Or maybe we've just gotten too comfortable with compromise." A young woman approached, one of the new cooperative members. "Ms. Deliverance, we've got a problem. There's a new logging operation starting up, undercutting our prices by half. Word is they're using undocumented workers, paying them nothing." Deliverance's eyes sharpened. "Where?" "About 50 miles north, just across the Tennessee line." "Get me details, everything you can find." After the young woman left, Deliverance turned to Zachariah. "See, the fight never ends. They find new ways to exploit. We find new ways to resist." "What will you do?" "Document everything. Contact immigration advocates, not to target the workers, but to protect them. Expose the operation's owners. Same playbook, new chapter." Zachariah thought about the cycles of exploitation and resistance he'd witnessed. Every victory temporary, every defeat potentially transformative. "I'm getting too old for this," he said. "No, you're getting experienced. That's different. We need your memory, your connections, your credibility." "For how long?" "As long as it takes, maybe forever." That night, alone in the center, Zachariah walked through the museum section. Photos of the original camp, the raid, the rebuilding, documents from the legal battles, tools donated by retired loggers. Each artifact a piece of a larger story about work, dignity, and the price of both. He stopped at a photo of Josiah, taken just months before his death. Still strong-looking, but with eyes that had seen too much. The caption read, "Josiah Crenshaw, 1975-2023. He fought for the living and the yet-to-be-born." Next to it was a photo Zachariah hadn't seen before, himself, that first night, standing by his truck looking confused and slightly afraid. Someone, probably Deliverance, had captioned it. "Zachariah Thompson. He took a detour and found his destination." His phone rang. Another trucker, another moral crisis, another request for guidance. He answered, settling into his role as keeper of stories, connector of struggles, witness to the ongoing fight for dignity in labor. Outside, trucks rumbled past on the now well-maintained road, some carrying cooperative lumber to fair markets, others carrying who knows what to who knows where. Each driver making choices about what they could live with, what they would accept, what they would resist. The landslide that had forced Zachariah's detour 20 years ago had been cleared in days. But the real obstacles, poverty, exploitation, the crushing weight of corporate power, remained. They just took different forms, required different detours. In the distance, dawn was breaking over the mountains. The same mountains that had seen indigenous peoples, settlers, coal miners, loggers, all struggling to survive against forces that valued resources over people. The cooperative sawmill started up, its sound carrying across the valley. Workers beginning another day of labor they controlled, profits they shared, dignity they'd fought to achieve and fought still to maintain. Zachariah made coffee, strong and bitter, and prepared for another day of bearing witness, carrying stories, maintaining connections. The detour he'd taken had become his main route, and he couldn't imagine driving any other road. The young trucker, Marcus, had called the night before. He'd quit the job hauling for clear cutters, started driving for the cooperative. The pay was less, but he said he could look his kid in the eye now. "That's worth more than money," he'd said. "Yes," Zachariah had agreed. "That's the whole point." The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning mist. The road stretched ahead, as it always did, full of possibilities and dangers, detours and destinations. And somewhere on that road, another driver was facing a choice, taking a turn that would change everything, becoming part of a story that had no end, only chapters. The fight continued. The resistance endured. The road went on. And Zachariah, keeper of stories, witness to struggle, remained at the crossroads, helping others navigate their own detours toward dignity. The way station's lights flickered in Mordecai's mirrors as he pulled off Interstate 77. 2 in the morning, middle of nowhere, West Virginia, and the station that should have been closed was lit up like a crime scene. The sign said, "All trucks must exit when lights flashing," and Mordecai had been driving long enough to know you didn't ignore that, even at this hour. His Mac anthem rolled to a stop on the scale. 42,000 pounds gross, well within limits. He had all his paperwork ready, logs, bills of lading, permits. 20 years of driving had taught him to keep everything perfect, especially when something felt off. And something definitely felt off. The station building was lit, but looked empty. No movement behind the windows, no officers walking around. Just those lights, flashing their mandatory summons into the darkness. Mordecai waited 5 minutes, then 10. Nobody came out. He was about to call dispatch when a knock on his door made him jump. A man stood there, uniformed but wrong somehow. The uniform was Department of Transportation, but old style, maybe from the 90s. The badge looked real enough, but the man wearing it seemed... tired wasn't the right word. Hollow, maybe. "Step out of the vehicle, sir." "Is there a problem, officer?" "Step out of the vehicle." Mordecai complied, keeping his hands visible. In 2 decades of driving, he'd learned to read cops, but this one was unreadable. Face like carved wood, eyes that didn't quite focus on anything. License, registration, logbook. Mordecai handed them over. The officer, his badge said Hezekiah, studied them with intense concentration, like he was reading a foreign language. "You're hauling medical supplies." "Yes, sir. Hospital delivery in Charleston, due by 6 a.m. "Open the trailer." That was unusual, but not unheard of. Mordecai walked to the back, broke the seal, swung open the doors. Boxes of medical supplies, exactly as manifested. Hezekiah climbed up, started checking boxes against the manifest, methodical and slow. "These 3 boxes," he said finally, pointing to containers near the front. "Wrong shipping codes." Mordecai checked. The codes looked right to him, but arguing with Doty was never smart. "I'm just the hauler, loaded and sealed at the warehouse." "Wrong codes mean inspection, full inspection. Pull around to Bay 2. Bay 2 was behind the main building, darker, more isolated. Mordecai wanted to protest, But something in Hezekiah's expression killed the words. He pulled his truck around, backed into the bay as directed. That's when he saw the other trucks. 3 of them, parked in the back lot like they'd been there for a while. Days, maybe, or weeks. One had flat tires. Another's cab door hung open, interior light long dead. The third was covered in dust so thick it looked abandoned. "Officer, whose trucks are those?" Hezekiah didn't answer, just started unloading boxes from Mordecai's trailer. Not inspecting, really, just moving them, stacking them in the bay with mechanical precision. "Hey, you can't just—" "Inspection protocol. Everything out, everything checked, everything reloaded. That'll take hours. I've got a deadline. Should have thought of that before hauling contraband." "What contraband? It's medical supplies." Hezekiah stopped, turned, and for the first time really looked at Mordecai. His eyes were wrong. Not the color or shape, but the depth. Like looking into an empty room. "You can wait in the building. Coffee machine works." It wasn't a suggestion. Mordecai walked to the building, found it unlocked, stepped inside. The fluorescent lights hummed with that particular frequency that gave headaches. The coffee machine was ancient, but did indeed work, producing something black and bitter that might have been coffee once. The waiting room had plastic chairs, old magazines, and a sense of abandonment despite the lights. Dust on everything except a clear path from door to coffee machine to chairs, like only certain routes were ever used. On the wall, a bulletin board held notices, all dated from different years. Safety reminders from 2018, wanted posters from 2003, a memo about new regulations from 1995. Like someone had been adding to it without ever removing anything, creating a timeline of bureaucracy. Mordecai tried his phone. No signal, which wasn't surprising in these mountains. The landline on the desk looked functional, but when he picked it up, no dial tone, just a soft clicking, rhythmic, like someone tapping on the other end. He went to the window, watched Hezekiah still unloading. The man never seemed to tire, just kept moving boxes with the same steady pace, but he wasn't inspecting them, wasn't opening anything, just moving them from trailer to bay, stacking them in neat rows. "You shouldn't be here." Mordecai spun around. A woman stood in the doorway to what must be the back offices, also in uniform, also wrong in that same hollow way. Her nameplate read Bathsheba. "I was told to wait here. Officer Hezekiah is inspecting my load." "Hezekiah?" She said the name like it was foreign. "Yes, he does that." "How long will it take?" "Until it's done." She moved to the coffee machine, poured herself a cup, didn't drink it, just held it, staring at the black liquid like it might reveal something. "Those trucks in the back lot," Mordecai said. "How long have they been here?" "Time is different here." "What does that mean?" She looked at him, and her eyes had that same empty depth. "Some stops are longer than others. Some drivers make their deliveries on time. Others don't." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm explaining. You have choices to make, important ones." Before Mordecai could ask what she meant, Hezekiah appeared in the doorway. "Found something," he said. They walked back to the bay. Hezekiah had one box open, revealing medical supplies, but also something else. Wrapped in plastic, hidden among the legitimate cargo, were packages of pills. Unmarked, unlabeled, definitely not on the manifest. "I don't know anything about those," Mordecai said, and he was telling the truth. "Drivers always say that." "Because it's true. Someone must have hidden them at the warehouse. Or you're smuggling. Either way, you're responsible for your cargo. This is a setup." Hezekiah tilted his head, considering. "Maybe. Doesn't matter. Contraband is contraband. So arrest me. Call the real cops. We are the real cops here. This is our jurisdiction. Then I want a lawyer. No lawyers at way stations. just inspections and consequences. The woman, Bathsheba, had followed them out. She stood by the abandoned trucks, one hand resting on a dusty hood. "These drivers," she said, "they all had contraband too, hidden in legitimate loads. Pills, weapons, worse things. Where are they now? Still here, in a way. Their trucks are here. Their cargo was processed. They made their choices." Mordecai felt cold despite the humid night. "You killed them? We didn't do anything. They chose. Same choice you have." "What choice?" Hezekiah stepped forward. "You can take responsibility, sign a confession, accept the consequences, or you can insist on innocence, demand investigation, wait for authorities who won't come." "How long would I wait?" "As long as it takes. Days, weeks. Your cargo rots, your deadline passes, your job disappears. But you'd be right. Righteous. Is being right worth losing everything?" Mordecai looked at the dead trucks, at the dusty bay, at these two officers who weren't quite right. "What happens if I confess?" "Fines. Mark on your record. But you drive away, make your delivery late but made, keep your job, your life. And the drugs? We dispose of them, properly. This is extortion. This is reality," Bathsheba said. "The system isn't fair, never has been. Sometimes survival means accepting unfairness." Mordecai thought about his wife, his mortgage, his son starting college next year, 20 years of clean driving about to be destroyed by someone else's crime. "I need to think." "Think fast," Hezekiah said. "Morning shift comes at 6. Different officers, different choices, less flexible." Mordecai walked around the building, trying to clear his head. The abandoned trucks drew him. He looked inside one, saw personal items still in the cab. Photos of family, a rosary hanging from the mirror, a logbook with entries that stopped mid-sentence. The second truck was worse. Blood on the seat, old and brown. Scratch marks on the inside of the doors like someone had tried to claw their way out. The sleeper curtain torn down, revealing more blood. The third truck was clean but wrong in a different way. Everything too neat, too positioned, like someone had arranged it all for display. On the dash, a note. "I chose wrong. Don't choose wrong." "They all chose to fight," Bathsheba said behind him. "Insisted on innocence, demanded justice. Noble, really. And they died for it. They disappeared, one by one, during their wait for justice that never came. We'd find them gone in the morning. Trucks still here, but drivers vanished." "You killed them." "We were asleep. Cameras show nothing. Just drivers there, one frame, gone the next." "This place. What is this place?" "A way station. A checkpoint. A place where decisions get made." She moved closer, and Mordecai could smell something wrong on her, like formaldehyde and old flowers. "Every road has places like this. Spots where the rules are different, where the system shows its true face." "You're insane. We're practical. Those drugs in your truck, someone put them there. Maybe dispatch, maybe the warehouse, maybe someone who needed them moved and knew you'd never check. Doesn't matter. They're your responsibility now. That's not justice. Justice is a luxury for people who can afford lawyers. You're a trucker with a mortgage." Hezekiah returned to the bay, continuing his mechanical unloading. Mordecai watched him work, trying to understand what was happening. These weren't normal DOT officers. The place wasn't a normal way station, but the drugs were real, the threat to his career was real. "I want to see your identification," Mordecai said to Bathsheba. "Badge number, supervisor's contact." She pulled out her badge, handed it over. It looked authentic, had weight and wear, but the photo was strange. It was her, but younger, or older, or both somehow. The issue date kept changing when he looked at it. 1987, 2001, 2019, never settling on 1 year. This isn't real. Real as anything else here. Real as those drugs in your truck. I'm leaving. Right now. With your trailer half unloaded? With uninspected contraband? You'll be stopped before you hit the interstate. Real cops then. Real charges. We're offering you a way out. By confessing to something I didn't do. By accepting reality. Someone used you. Made you a mule without your knowledge. It happens every day. Drivers caught with hidden cargo. Lives destroyed. We're giving you a choice most don't get. A sound from outside made them both turn. Another truck was pulling into the station, a freightliner with Nevada plates. The driver looked confused, probably wondering, same as Mordecai, why the station was open. "Wait here," Bathsheba said, and walked out to meet the new arrival. Mordecai watched through the window. The driver, a young guy, maybe 25, was showing his paperwork. Bathsheba examined it, shook her head, pointed to the exit. The driver seemed to argue, but she remained firm. Finally, he got back in his truck and left. She returned, brushing dust off her uniform. Why did he get to leave? His cargo was clean. No hidden surprises, no choices to make. You checked that fast? We know. Same way we knew about yours before we opened it. Then this whole thing is theater. No, this is process. You were chosen to carry those drugs. Someone in your company, at the warehouse, somewhere in the chain. They picked you because you're reliable, never inspect your sealed loads, always make deliveries on time. Perfect mule. Who? Who would do that? Does it matter? Could be anyone. Dispatcher with debts, warehouse worker with habits, even management with side businesses. The drugs are in your truck. That's all that matters now. Mordecai's phone buzzed. Somehow, impossibly, he had signal. A text from an unknown number. Sign and drive. Don't end up like the others. Who sent this? Bathsheba shrugged. Someone who wants you to survive this. Another text. Check the third truck's glove box. Mordecai walked back outside, Bathsheba following but not stopping him. The third truck, the eerily neat one, was unlocked. In the glove box, under old receipts and maps, was a folder. Inside, photos. The photos showed drivers at this same way station, all at night, all with Hezekiah or Bathsheba or both, all looking confused, scared, angry. On the back of each photo, a date and a note. Michael Torres, refused confession, missing 3 days later. Sarah Kim, demanded investigation, found dead, ruled suicide. James Wright, fought back, never found. Photo after photo, dozens of them, spanning years. All drivers who'd chosen to fight, all gone. We didn't take those photos, Bathsheba said. Someone else did. Someone watching. Someone who wants drivers to understand the choice. This is evidence of murder. This is evidence that bad things happen to drivers who don't cooperate, whether we cause them or just predict them. She shrugged. You're threatening me. We're showing you patterns. You can be another photo in that folder. Or you can sign a confession, pay a fine, and drive away with a story no one will believe. Mordecai looked at the photos again. One caught his eye, dated just last month. The driver looked familiar. He'd met him at a truck stop in Ohio, had coffee, talked about families. Good man, religious, always talking about fighting injustice. Dave Paulson, I knew him. Then you know he disappeared. Truck found abandoned in Kentucky. No trace of him. You killed him. He killed himself by refusing to accept reality. The drugs were planted, yes, but they were in his truck. The system doesn't care about fairness, only facts. Hezekiah appeared, wiping his hands on a rag. Finished unloading, found more contraband, weapons this time, pistols hidden in medical supply boxes. That's impossible. Those boxes were sealed at the warehouse. Seals can be faked, or maybe the warehouse is in on it. Doesn't matter. Weapons are in your truck. Mordecai felt the walls closing in. Drugs were bad enough, but weapons trafficking was federal time. "What do you want from me?" "Confession," Hezekiah said. "Admit you knew about the drugs. Not the weapons. Those will disappear. Just the drugs. Misdemeanor possession, intent to distribute. You'll lose your CDL for a year, pay fines, maybe probation. My career would be over." "Your career versus your life," Bathsheba said. "That's the real choice." "If I sign, if I confess, you let me go?" "You drive away tonight. Make your delivery late, but alive." "And if I don't?" Hezekiah gestured to the abandoned trucks. "You wait for justice. Long wait. Things happen to people who wait too long here." Mordecai thought about calling 911, but his phone was dead again. The landline still had no dial tone. He was trapped in this pocket of wrong, this place where rules bent and justice was a threat. "I need air," he said. Outside, the night was humid and still. No traffic on the interstate, like the world had paused. The mountains pressed in on all sides, black shapes against a starless sky. The way station felt like the only lit spot in an ocean of darkness. He walked to his truck, climbed into the cab, tried the radio. Static on all channels except one, where a voice was repeating, "Sign and survive. Fight and disappear. Sign and survive." His personal phone, the one he kept hidden for family only, rang. His wife's number. "Honey?" Her voice was distant, distorted. "Marcy? Can you hear me?" "Mordecai, there are men here. They say you're in trouble. They say if you don't cooperate, they'll..." "God, Mordecai, what's happening? Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm at home. But these men, they know things. About your route, your cargo. They say you have 1 hour to make the right choice. Call the police." "They are the police. Or they say they are. Mordecai, please, just do whatever they want." The line went dead. He tried calling back, but got nothing. His hands were shaking as he climbed down from the cab. Bathsheba was waiting. "Your family is fine, for now. But people who cause problems for the system, their families sometimes have problems too. Accidents, investigations, bad luck that compounds." "You're monsters." "We're cogs in a machine. The machine doesn't care about individual innocence. It cares about flow, efficiency, examples. You can be an example of cooperation or resistance. Your choice." "It's not a choice if you're threatening my family." "Everything's a choice. Just some choices have worse consequences than others." They walked back to the office where Hezekiah had paperwork ready. A confession, admitting to knowingly transporting controlled substances. The language was vague enough to be for the drugs, but not the weapons. "Sign here, initial here, date here." The pen felt heavy in Mordecai's hand. 20 years of clean driving about to end with a lie. But the alternative... He thought about Dave Paulson, about the blood in that truck, about his wife's terrified voice. He signed. The moment the pen left paper, the atmosphere changed. The oppressive weight lifted slightly. Hezekiah's face almost showed expression. Satisfaction, maybe, or relief. "Reload your truck," he said. "Leave the contraband here. Make your delivery." "That's it?" "That's it. Your confession will be filed. You'll get a court date in the mail. Plead guilty. Pay the fine. Move on." "And my CDL?" "Suspended for a year. After that, you can reapply. Some companies will hire drivers with records. Not the good ones, but some." Mordecai spent the next 2 hours reloading his trailer. The drugs and weapons had vanished, like they'd never existed. The medical supplies went back exactly as they'd been. Seals replaced, paperwork adjusted. As he worked, other trucks pulled in. Some were waved through quickly. Others were directed to the bay. He saw 2 more drivers presented with the same choice. One signed immediately, seemingly familiar with the process. The other argued, demanded lawyers, threatened lawsuits. "That one won't leave," Bathsheba said, appearing beside him. "Too righteous, too convinced the system should be fair. He'll be here for days, maybe weeks. Then one morning we'll find his truck empty." Where do they go? The ones who disappear? Where does anyone go when the system digests them? Prisons, morgues, missing person files. The machine has many stomachs. Mordecai finished loading, closed his trailer, replaced the seal. His paperwork was stamped, cleared, ready for the road. But as he walked to his cab, Hezekiah stopped him. "A word of advice. Find a new route. This station, this choice, it only happens once. Next time you carry something hidden, there won't be an offer. Just consequences." How do I avoid carrying hidden things? You don't. That's why you find a new route. Some roads lead through places like this. Smart drivers learn to avoid them. "And if I tell people, report this place?" Bathsheba laughed, a sound like grinding gears. "Tell them what? That DOT officers offered you leniency for a confession? That you signed rather than fight? That you think the way station is haunted? Who would believe you?" She was right. The whole thing sounded insane. Even with photos, even with evidence, it would seem like the ravings of a driver who got caught smuggling and wanted someone else to blame. Mordecai drove away from the way station at 4:47 a.m. In his mirrors, the lights still flashed, still summoned, but not for him. He was free, or as free as someone could be who'd just signed away 20 years of clean driving. The interstate was empty, dark, normal, like crossing from a nightmare back into regular sleep. His hands still shook on the wheel. He pulled over at the first rest stop, sat in his cab, and called his wife. "Marcy, are you okay? Mordecai, where have you been? I've been calling for hours." "You called me. Said there were men at the house." "What?" "No, I've been asleep. Just woke up when the phone rang." He wanted to tell her everything, but the words wouldn't come. How did you explain that place, those people, that choice? "Bad night. I'll be home tomorrow." "You sound terrible." "I am terrible, but I'm alive." He made his delivery in Charleston 2 hours late. The hospital dock worker complained but accepted the shipment. All the medical supplies were there, properly sealed, no sign of tampering, like the drugs and weapons had never existed. On the drive home, he stopped at a truck stop and searched online for information about the way station. He found it on maps, but the details were wrong. Listed as permanently closed, had been for 5 years according to the DOT website. No officers named Hezekiah or Bathsheba in the employee database. But he found other things. Forum posts from drivers, quickly deleted but cached in search engines. Stories about a way station that shouldn't be open but was. About choices offered in the middle of the night. About drivers who refused and vanished. One post from 3 years ago caught his attention. "They're not DOT. Don't know what they are, but they know things. Know what's hidden in your truck before they look. Know about your family, your debts, your secrets. They offer you a deal that destroys your career but saves your life. Take it. Whatever else you do, take it. The ones who don't become statistics." The username was dpaulson44. Dave Paulson. Mordecai messaged the account, not expecting a response, but within minutes a reply. "You were there. You met them." "Dave? You're alive?" "In a way. Different name now. Different life. Can't drive trucks anymore, but I'm breathing. They said you disappeared." "I did. Old me disappeared. Refused their deal at first, fought back. They kept me there for 6 days. 6 days in that station, watching other drivers come and go. No food, no water. But I didn't die. Couldn't die. That place doesn't let you die, just suffer. What made you change your mind? They showed me things, other drivers who'd refused. Not photos, the actual drivers. Broken, insane, begging for death but not allowed it. Trapped in some kind of loop, living their refusal over and over. I signed to avoid that fate. This is insane. Yes, but it's also real. Real as the confession you signed, the career you lost, the life you saved. Who are they? Does it matter? They exist. They have power. They offer choices. Maybe they're demons. Maybe they're government. Maybe they're something else. The what doesn't matter, only the is. We should expose them. With what proof? A closed way station that doesn't exist? Officers who were never employed? Drugs that vanished? Everyone who tries to expose them sounds crazy. Eventually, they stop trying. Dave was right. Mordecai had nothing but his story and a confession he'd signed admitting guilt. Any attempt to explain would make him look like he was trying to escape responsibility. A week later, the court summons arrived. Possession with intent to distribute, based on his signed confession. His lawyer, a public defender who looked exhausted before they even started talking, advised him to plead guilty. You confessed. Fighting it now just means more charges, longer sentence. The confession was coerced. By who? DOT officers who don't exist at a station that's been closed for years? You don't believe me. Doesn't matter what I believe, matters what a jury would believe. Take the plea. 1 year license suspension, 2 years probation, 10,000 in fines. You could get 5 years in prison if you fight and lose. Mordecai took the plea. The trucking company fired him immediately. Word spread fast in the industry. Mordecai Thompson, 20-year veteran, caught smuggling drugs. No one wanted to hear his side. No one would believe it anyway. He found work in a warehouse, making a third of what he'd made driving. Marcy took extra shifts at the hospital. They kept the house but lost the savings, the college fund, the retirement plan. 6 months later, he was working late when a familiar figure walked into the warehouse. Bathsheba, but dressed civilian, looking almost normal except for those empty eyes. Hello, Mordecai. What do you want? To check on you, make sure you're adjusting. You destroyed my life. We saved it. You'd be dead if you'd refused. Or worse. What could be worse? Eternal refusal. That place, that choice, it marks you. The ones who refuse, they replay that refusal forever, even after death, especially after death. You're insane. I'm something. Not sure what anymore. Been at that station so long I've forgotten what I was before. Hezekiah, too. We were drivers once, I think. Made our own choices. Now we offer choices to others. You're trapped there? Trapped is the wrong word. We belong there, part of the mechanism. Every crossroads needs guides, even horrible ones. Why tell me this? Because you're marked now, too. The confession, the choice, it connects you to that place. You'll feel it calling sometimes. Might even see it when you're not looking for it. Don't go back. Once was enough. I never want to see that place again. Want and will are different things. The station calls its own, especially the ones who know the truth. She left without another word. Mordecai tried to follow, but she vanished into the warehouse shadows like she'd never been there. A year passed. Mordecai got his CDL reinstated, but no company would hire him. The drug conviction was a scarlet letter in the trucking world. He kept working the warehouse, kept his head down, tried to forget. But sometimes, driving home late at night, he'd see the way station lights in his mirrors. Not possible. He was nowhere near that stretch of interstate. But there they were, flashing, calling. He never stopped, never looked back. But they were there. Other drivers started finding him, ones who'd been through the same thing. They had a kind of underground network, sharing stories, warnings, routes to avoid. All had made the same choice. All had survived. All were marked. "It's spreading," one told him. "More stations like that. Different locations, but same choice. Someone's building a network, catching drivers, forcing confessions. For what purpose? Control. Fear. Maybe just because they can. The system needs its victims, and we're easy targets. Alone on dark roads, carrying cargo we don't inspect, vulnerable to anyone with authority." They tried to warn other drivers, but who would listen? Conspiracy theories from convicted drug smugglers didn't carry much weight. Then Mordecai got a call from an unknown number. "We need drivers." Hezekiah's voice, unmistakable. "I don't drive anymore." "You do, just not trucks. But we need someone who knows the roads, knows the life. Someone already marked." "For what?" "Collection. Retrieval. Some drivers who refuse our offer run. We need them brought back." "I won't kidnap people for you." "Not kidnap. Remind. They can't escape the choice by running. The station exists everywhere they go, waiting. We just help them find it again." "No. Your son starts college next year. Expensive, even with aid. We could help with that. Stay away from my family. We're offering opportunity, not threatening. Think about it." The call ended. But the offer lingered. Money they desperately needed, for work he desperately didn't want to do. That night he dreamed of the station. Not a dream, really. More like a visit. He stood in the office watching new drivers get processed. Saw their confusion turn to fear, turn to resignation. Watched them sign confessions, surrender careers, save their lives. "This is forever," Bathsheba said in the dream. "The station is eternal. The choice is eternal. You're part of it now, whether you work for us or not." He woke gasping, sheets soaked with sweat. Marcy stirred beside him. "The nightmares again?" "Yeah." "About that night? The arrest?" She still didn't know the truth. He'd told her he'd been framed, but had to confess to avoid worse charges, close enough to truth to be believable. "I can't escape it," he said. "What happened that night, it follows me." "Time heals," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. They both knew some wounds never healed, just scarred over. The next day at work, a new employee started. Young guy, maybe 22, eager and chatty. During break, he mentioned he used to drive trucks. Had to stop, though. Weird thing happened at a way station. These officers, they... "Don't," Mordecai interrupted. "Whatever happened, don't talk about it. Not here, not anywhere." The kid looked scared. "You know? You've been there?" "We've all been there, one way or another." "You signed?" "Yeah. Didn't feel like I had a choice." "You didn't. None of us did." Mordecai looked around, making sure no one was listening. "Keep your head down. Rebuild your life. Forget it happened. That's the only way forward." "But it wasn't right. They planted those drugs." "Right doesn't matter. Survival matters. You survived. Be grateful." The kid wanted to argue. Mordecai could see it. The same righteous anger he'd felt, the same need for justice. But it would fade. The system would grind it down, replace it with resignation. That night, driving home, the way station lights were in his mirrors again. Brighter this time, more insistent. He pulled over, turned around, saw nothing but empty road behind him. But he could feel it calling. He thought about Hezekiah's offer, about becoming part of the mechanism that had destroyed him. The money would solve so many problems. His son could go to college. Marcy could quit her second job. All he had to do was help trap other drivers in the same choice he'd faced. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Have you decided?" Hezekiah asked. "I need more information. What exactly would I be doing?" "Driving, following, watching. Some drivers who refuse our initial offer run. They abandon their trucks, their lives, try to disappear. We need them found, reminded that the choice doesn't go away. And if they still refuse, then they face the consequences. Not from us. We're just messengers. But the system has teeth, and it bites those who run. I need to think about it, Mordecai said. 3 days. Then the offer expires. The line went dead. Mordecai sat in his car in the warehouse parking lot, engine running, heat fighting against the November cold. 3 days to decide whether to become the thing that had destroyed him. That night, he researched everything he could find about disappeared drivers. The numbers were staggering. Hundreds every year, vehicles found abandoned, no trace of the drivers. Most were attributed to crime, accidents, voluntary disappearance. But the pattern was there if you looked. Many had recent legal troubles, confessions, guilty pleas for crimes they swore they didn't commit. He found a message board hidden deep in the dark web where drivers shared stories. Not just about that one way station, but dozens of similar places. Rest stops where time worked differently. Truck stops where you could check in but never leave. Roads that led to places that shouldn't exist. One post stood out. They're not human anymore. The ones who work for them. They started as drivers like us, but each choice they make for the system changes them. Eventually, they become part of it. Empty. Eternal. Trapped forever in the mechanism of control. It was signed H. Could have been anyone, but Mordecai wondered if it was Hezekiah, from before he became whatever he was now. On the second day, a package arrived at his house. No return address, no delivery service markings. Inside was a photo of his son at college orientation, talking to a recruiter. On the back, he has potential. Shame if money problems derailed his dreams. Not a threat exactly, but pressure. Showing they could reach his family, knew their routines, their hopes. Marcy found him looking at the photo. "What's that?" "Job offer," he said, which wasn't entirely a lie. "Trucking again?" "Sort of. Specialty work. Pays well. But it's not good work. Legal, but not good." She sat beside him, took his hand. "We're managing. You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. Jacob's college. We'll figure it out. We always do." But they weren't figuring it out. Bills piled up, savings dwindled, and the weight of financial stress pressed on their marriage. Mordecai could see Marcy aging faster, working herself to exhaustion. Could see Jacob considering community college instead of the engineering program he'd dreamed of. On the third day, Mordecai drove to the way station, not the interstate route, but back roads he'd found on old maps. The station should have been closed, derelict, but as he approached, the lights began flashing. It looked different in daylight. Smaller, shabbier, obviously abandoned except for those impossible lights and the two figures standing by the scale. "You came," Hezekiah said. "I need to know more. What am I becoming if I say yes?" "Necessary," Bathsheba answered. "The system needs enforcers, retrievers, those who understand both sides of the choice." "Will I become like you? Empty?" "Eventually. But that takes years, decades maybe. You'll have time to set your family up first." "And if I refuse? Then you go back to your warehouse, your normal life, your slow decline into poverty. No retaliation?" "We don't retaliate," Hezekiah said. "We don't need to. Life retaliates enough on its own." Mordecai looked at the abandoned trucks, still there, probably forever. Monuments to refusal, to the price of fighting the system. "What happened to you?" he asked Hezekiah. "How did you become this?" Hezekiah was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had something it normally lacked, a trace of emotion. "I was like you, driver caught with planted drugs. But I refused the confession. Spent 2 weeks here, fighting, demanding justice. They broke me. Not physically, something worse. Showed me the truth about how things really work. How the system needs victims, needs confessions, needs the innocent to admit guilt to keep functioning. So you joined them? I became them. Each choice I enforced, each driver I processed, took a piece of what I was. Now I'm just function, just purpose. But my family lived well. My kids went to college. My wife never knew the truth. Is it worth it? Worth is a human concept. I'm not human anymore. What about you? Mordecai asked Bathsheba. Similar story, different decade. The station has been here longer than the interstate. Different forms, same function. Always needing staff, always recruiting from those who understand the choice. How many others work for you? Dozens, across the country. All former drivers, all marked by the choice, all slowly becoming empty. Mordecai thought about his son, his wife, their struggles. Thought about the young driver at the warehouse, the network of broken careers, the system that ground people into compliance. If I say yes, how long before I'm like you? Depends on how much of yourself you give. Some resist the emptying, work part-time, keep their humanity longer. Others embrace it, find peace in becoming function instead of person. And I could stop? Walk away? You can stop working for us. You can never stop being marked. The choice once made is forever. A truck pulled into the station. A real truck. Modern, with a confused driver wondering why the closed station was directing him in. Hezekiah and Bathsheba moved toward it with their mechanical precision. "Wait here," Bathsheba said. "Watch how it works." Mordecai watched them process the driver. The confusion, the inspection, the discovery of contraband. The driver's protests, his anger, his fear. The offer of a choice. This driver was smarter or more broken. He signed immediately. No fight, no resistance. "That was easy," Mordecai said when they returned. "They're getting easier. Word spreads. Drivers know fighting doesn't work." "Then why do you need retrievers?" "Because some still run. Some think they can escape the choice by abandoning everything. They need to learn that the choice follows them." "Show me," Mordecai said. "Show me what the job actually is." Hezekiah pulled out a file. Inside were photos and information about a driver named William Brennan. Had refused the choice 2 weeks ago, abandoned his truck, disappeared. He's in Memphis, working under a false name in a distribution center. Thinks he's escaped. What would I do? Find him. Remind him the choice is waiting. Bring him back if he's ready to sign. Document his refusal if he's not. And then? Then the system handles it. Arrests, accidents, whatever consequences naturally follow. Naturally? Everything can be made to look natural. Mordecai looked at the file. William Brennan had a face like his own, tired, worn, desperate. A man caught in the gears of something bigger than himself. "I won't hurt people." "We don't ask you to. Just find them, remind them, report back. The system does its own hurting." "The pay?" $5,000 per retrieval, plus expenses, plus bonuses for difficult cases. More than he made in 2 months at the warehouse. Enough to change everything for his family. "I'll do one," Mordecai said. "Trial run. If I can't handle it, I walk away." "Fair enough," Bathsheba said. She handed him a black phone. "This is how we contact you. How you report. Don't lose it." "What about my regular job?" "Call in sick when we need you. These retrievals usually take 2-3 days max." "And William Brennan?" "Your first assignment. Find him, remind him, report back." Mordecai took the file, the phone, the weight of his decision. As he drove away, the way station faded in his mirrors, becoming the abandoned building it was supposed to be. That night, he told Marcy he'd gotten a consulting job. Occasional travel, good pay, helping a transportation company with driver relations. Close enough to truth to be believable. "This is good news," she said, but her eyes showed concern. "You sure about this?" "No, but we need the money. We need you whole more than we need money." "I'll be fine." But he wasn't fine. That night he dreamed of empty eyes and mechanical movements, of becoming hollow, functional, eternal, of processing drivers through choices that destroyed them either way. He found William Brennan 3 days later, working third shift at a FedEx hub, using the name Billy Carpenter, living in a weekly motel, paying cash, trying to stay invisible. Mordecai watched him for a day before approaching, saw the fear in every movement, the constant checking over shoulders, the readiness to run. A man living as prey. Finally, in the motel parking lot at dawn, Mordecai approached. "William Brennan." The man spun, ready to run or fight, saw Mordecai, recognized something in his eyes. "You're one of them." "I'm a driver, like you. I made the choice. I won't sign. I won't confess to something I didn't do." "Then don't." "But you can't run from it. The choice follows you. I'm free here. You're hiding here. Different thing." William studied him. "You signed?" "I signed. Lost my CDL, my career, everything. But I'm alive. My family's safe." "Safe? That's what they promise. But at what cost?" "The cost is the cost. Question is whether you pay it or it pays you." "That doesn't make sense." "None of this makes sense. But it's real." They talked for an hour. Mordecai didn't threaten, didn't pressure, just explained the reality. The system wouldn't forget. The choice wouldn't disappear. Running just delayed the inevitable and made it worse. "I can't do it," William said finally. "I can't admit to something I didn't do." "Then don't. But stop running. Face it on your terms." "They'll destroy me." "Maybe. But running is destroying you anyway." William was quiet for a long moment. "If I go back, if I face them, will you be there?" "I can't interfere, but I can witness." "That's something." William went back. Mordecai followed, reported to the black phone. 2 days later, news reported William Brennan found dead in his apartment. Suicide, they said. But Mordecai knew better. The system had collected its due. The $5,000 arrived in his account labeled consulting fee. Clean, legitimate, taxable. He paid bills, put money toward Jacob's college, took Marcy to dinner at a place they couldn't afford before. "This new job," she said over wine, "it's changing you." "How?" "You're quieter, more distant, like you're carrying something heavy." "Just adjusting." But she was right. Each retrieval took something from him. He found 4 more runners over the next 3 months. 2 signed and lived. 2 refused and didn't. Each time, he felt himself becoming more mechanical, more functional, less human. The black phone rang constantly now. More assignments, more runners, more choices to enforce. The money was good, but the cost was higher. He could feel himself emptying, becoming like Hezekiah and Bathsheba. One night, Jacob asked him about his work. "Mom says you help drivers in trouble." "Something like that." "Help them how?" "Make choices. Hard choices." "Good choices?" "Necessary choices." Jacob studied him with eyes too wise for 18. "Are you happy?" "I'm useful." "That's not the same thing." "No," Mordecai agreed. "It's not." He thought about quitting, but each time he decided to stop, another bill arrived. Another expense. Another need. The money had become necessary, the work had become routine, the emptying had become normal. 6 months in, he understood. This was how they got you. Not through threats or force, but through slow compromise. Each choice leading to the next, each step taking you further from who you were, until one day you looked in the mirror and saw empty eyes looking back. He was becoming one of them. Not quickly, not dramatically, but inevitably. The system was patient. It could wait. It had forever. And soon, so would he. The way station lights still flashed in his mirrors, calling him home to the place where choices were made and souls were traded for survival. He drove toward them now, not away. Understanding, finally, that the choice had never been about the drugs, the confession, the career. It had been about this, becoming part of the mechanism. Another cog in the machine that processed human lives into compliance. He thought about William Brennan, about Dave Paulson, about all the drivers whose lives had been destroyed by planted evidence and impossible choices. Then he thought about his son in college, his wife sleeping peacefully, his bills paid. The price of their comfort was his humanity. He was paying it, installment by installment, retrieval by retrieval. And someday, when he was completely empty, he would stand at a way station, offering choices to new drivers, continuing the cycle forever. The road stretched ahead, dark and endless. Mordecai drove on, carrying his burden, becoming his function, accepting his fate. The system had won. It always did.